Chapter 963. The 7 white snakes that were hundreds of feet tall scared village chief Olbu. After living for so long, he had never seen such a terrible thing. He even forgot that he still had lightning in his hands. The Deshang realm ability had already blocked the way to the village. Muyu could only take the village chief and keep retreating. If this went on, it would be impossible for the village chief to get the protection of the flowing water village's array. The entire void had been sealed by the palace envoy's realm ability. At this time, the palace envoy waved his hand, and one of the huge snake heads roared and quickly bit towards Muyu. This snake head covered the sky, and its body seemed to be integrated with the void. When it pounced over, it disappeared into the void, and when it reappeared, it was already behind them. Realm ability, Wild 7 Arts. In the realm, these 7 white snakes were everywhere. They only had their heads, and their bodies were stored in the range of the realm, appearing everywhere. The snakehead's attack speed was very fast, and ripples appeared in the void. When Muyu reacted, the snake's stinky tongue had already bitten down. Muyu immediately took the village chief away, but when he just appeared, the snakehead followed him like a shadow and bit down. If he didn't escape the range of the realm, he would be entangled by this elusive white snake and couldn't get away. Grandpa, listen to my instructions. When I tell you to release the lightning technique, release it. At this time, being entangled by the palace envoy's realm ability, Muyu couldn't break free with his speed. However, his speed was very fast, and the array pattern covered the surroundings. Because the palace envoy was also afraid of the village chief's lightning technique, he didn't dare to get too close. Otherwise, Muyu wouldn't have a chance to deal with the palace envoy. Okay. Village chief Olbu responded nervously. Beads of sweat appeared on his forehead. It was his first time fighting with others, and he had no experience at all. He could only listen to Muyu's instructions. The cyan formation pattern suddenly spread out and covered both of the village chief's hands. The lightning merged into the formation pattern, making it look strange and dazzling. However, it also gathered all the lightning together, making the power of the lightning technique even more concentrated. Muyu kept dodging the white snakehead. He had already brought the village chief to an angle. This angle just happened to put the palace envoy, Shihongi, and Guku in the same line. Now, Muyu shouted, "I'll fight it out with you." Village chief Olbu also shouted. He closed his eyes and shook his hand. The terrifying lightning technique gathered in his hand again and was guided out from his hand. This lightning technique was destructive. The white snake head was annihilated in the lightning technique as soon as it appeared. The power of the lightning technique even tore the palace envoy's realm to pieces. The whole void once again erupted with an earth-shattering hissing sound. Countless lightning patterns flashed and rushed toward Guku at the front. This lightning technique that gathered the sword shadow dust wind array and the domain of defying thunder immortal was so powerful that Guku, who was only at the crossing calamity stage, couldn't block it at all. It was too late for him to escape. The palace envoy also roared and grabbed Guku and Shihongi. His figure quickly retreated. Boom! The whole area shook again. The area within 100 miles was bombarded again. All the dust was covered by lightning. It was like a thunderstorm, which made people tremble in fear. The palace emissary appeared in the air with Guku and Shihongi in a sorry state. However, Guku's face was twisted in pain. His lower body had been charred by the lightning, and only half of his body was left. If the palace emissary had not saved him, this terrifying lightning technique could have taken his life. Bastard! Guku roared unwillingly. He eagerly said, "I need to kill some people to replenish my soul power." No, everyone in the Moyun Mountain range can't produce soul power after killing them. The sword shadow, dust wind, has already protected the people in the Moyun Mountain range. Wait until they leave the Moyun Mountain range before killing them, the palace envoy said in a deep voice. Palace envoy, they escaped in that direction. Shihongi pointed to the east and said, "They can't escape." The palace envoy snorted coldly. The flowing water village was in the west. If they fled to the east, they would obviously run in the opposite direction of the flowing water village's protective array. With the palace envoy's Mayana stage cultivation, it was more than enough to catch up with Mu Yu and the others. Chase. The palace envoy took the two of them and chased in the direction of Mu Yu and the village. Village chief Old Cloth was already scared out of his wits. Just now, he had used the remnants of the thunder art in his body. At this time, he had turned back into an ordinary person. He was lying on Mu Yu's back, shivering. Mu Yu was carrying him on her back, using the power of slaughter to madly run. Mu Yu, why is your body so cold? Village chief Old Bu shivered. Mu Yu's killing power made his heart palpitate. Little Handsome, help! Mu Yu shouted. Little Handsome had already landed on village chief Old Bu's shoulder. A spirit energy wrapped around village chief Old Bu's body, isolating him from Mu Yu's killing aura. Village chief Old Bu felt a little better. Mu Yu's speed had already increased to the limit. However, at this time, the palace envoy's terrifying aura was getting closer and closer. After all, the palace envoy was a Mahayana stage cultivator. His speed was far faster than Mu Yu. He would probably catch Mu Yu and the others in half an hour. Not good if this goes on. We will be caught by those three damned pretty boys sooner or later. Little Handsome shouted. I know, I am thinking of a way. Mu Yu's mind was filled with thoughts. He couldn't go in the direction of Fu Long Mountain because there was a group of Yu Meng who didn't like war living in seclusion there. They would be a burden to them. However, now that the village chief had used his last protective lightning technique, they had already lost their most advantageous trump card. Mu Yu, if I'm a burden to you, you should quickly put me down and run for your life. Grandpa can't let anything happen to you. Village chief Old Bu said worriedly. Don't be silly, Grandpa. You didn't abandon me when I was young. How can I abandon you now? Mu Yu said without hesitation. Village chief Old Bu hugged Mu Yu's neck tightly and said emotionally, My little Mu Yu said so. Grandpa is very happy. Even though Mu Yu was a good youth, in village chief Old Bu's eyes, Mu Yu was still the little Mu Yu who needed his protection. Don't be happy. They are catching up to us. Little Handsome shouted. The void behind them shook, and the palace envoy's silhouette appeared several thousand meters behind them. The Deshang realm's ability covered them once again. This time, without the lightning technique. Let's see where you can run to. The palace envoy laughed wildly, and his realm's ability engulfed them once again. He wanted to capture Mu Yu. The white snake head hissed wildly and bit at them, as if it wanted to devour Mu Yu and village chief Old Bu. Mu Yu had already poured his spiritual power into the Sea Demon King's realm magic treasure and activated the Sea Demon King's realm's ability. My lord rises and falls. In the Sea Demon King's realm, everyone would be like a lone boat sailing in the stormy sea. They wouldn't be able to control their direction accurately. Mu Yu had already used the realm's ability 3 times, and he was familiar with how to control this kind of realm's ability. This time, he used the Sea Demon King's realm's ability with great care, and he covered the area less than 10 meters around him with the realm's ability. When the giant snake head bit down, it was like biting the seawater. The seawater's resistance swung the snake head away, and it couldn't bite him. He left many paths of the Sea Demon King's realm's ability in his flight path, and as long as the palace envoy and the other 2 used this path to chase after Mu Yu, they would be affected by the Sea Demon King's realm's ability, and their speed would be slowed down. Sure enough, Mu Yu shook off the palace envoy once again, but this wasn't Mu Yu's realm's ability, and this realm's ability would allow them to escape for a quarter of an hour at most. Let's see how you can escape. The palace envoy also discovered the realm's ability left behind by Mu Yu while he was escaping, and these realms also gave him some trouble. But he quickly struggled free of the Sea Demon King's realm's ability, and he didn't chase after Mu Yu. Instead, he took a detour. But even though the palace envoy took a detour, his speed was still quite fast, and he instantly reached 100 meters behind Mu Yu. The annoying pretty boy has come again, Xiao Shuai shouted once again. Mu Yu estimated the distance between them, and he knew where he should run. It's now. Mu Yu felt that the distance between them wasn't too far, and he clenched his teeth. He staked everything on a single throw and used the Sea Demon King's remaining realm's ability, and 1,000 meters tall wall of waves appeared behind him. This giant wall was at least 100 meters tall, and it was aimed at the palace envoy. When the palace envoy entered the giant wall of waves, it was like he was swimming, and his speed was slowed down by the seawater. My lord, Chen Fu, has another ability. Don't underestimate the Sea Demon King. Muyu had seen the Sea Demon King use this realm twice, so he also knew how to perfectly use the My Lord Chen Fu realm's ability. The palace envoy was entangled by this wave, and he was quite annoyed. Even though Muyu couldn't injure him, this realm's ability was the real deal of the Sea Demon King. Not only did it limit his speed, it also formed a bubble that wrapped the palace envoy inside. But Muyu used his realm's ability to deal with the palace envoy, and Guku and Shihongi were able to catch up without any hindrance. Guku was incomparably furious when half of his body was cut off by the lightning art. His cultivation was originally higher than Muyu's, and now that Muyu used the Sea Demon King's realm's ability, most of the spiritual energy in his body was already consumed, and it was more than enough for the two of them to join hands and deal with Muyu. Let's see where you can run to this time, Guku said, full of anger. Even if he lost half of his body, his cultivation wouldn't be reduced by much, and the people of the third layer palace could survive as long as they had soul power. Shihongi's cultivation was at the 8th layer of tribulation passing stage, and he was even more powerful than Muyu. Taking advantage of the time when Muyu's spiritual energy was exhausted, he stepped out and intercepted Muyu. What should we do? Muyu, can you beat the two of them? Village Chief Oldbu asked nervously. I'll try my best. Muyu panted heavily. He didn't have any confidence in facing these two people, but at least these two people weren't like Jiang Shangqiu and Xiang Yiguan, who killed the entire city's people to obtain soul power to trap him. Chapter 964. Because Muyu had used the Sea Demon King's My Lord's Rise and Fall ability, the spiritual energy in his body was not enough for him to deal with Guku and Shihongi at the same time. Not to mention, he still had the unarmed village chief to protect him. He could not truly let go of himself to deal with these two people. Little Handsome, help me protect Grandpa. The Shadow Clone Sword had already appeared in Muyu's hand. Powerful sword chi soared into the sky, stirring up the clouds and wind. Instantly, the entire sky surged with wind and clouds, and a terrifying vortex was quickly formed with the sword chi as the center. A domineering and austere sword intent gathered with the sword chi as the center. It was as if the heavens were about to send down an angry punishment that would destroy everything. Muyu's entire body was also enveloped by the powerful sword chi. Little Handsome was not afraid of his thick skin, but the village chief was only immortal and could not withstand this kind of sword chi. Thus, Little Handsome quickly controlled his spiritual energy to isolate the village chief from Muyu's contact, allowing Muyu to deal with Guku and Shihongi without any worries. The sword intent in the sky rumbled in the sky, and a violent aura covered the entire sky, causing Guku and Shihongi to reveal serious expressions. However, they were powerful after all, and they immediately summoned their soul beads. The blood-colored soul beads filled the air in front of their chests, appearing incomparably demonic. Soul Technique Luo-In, Heavenly Demon Seal. The 9 blood-colored soul beads in front of Shihongi merged together in the air, forming a huge seal that was thousands of feet tall. It was like a mountain that could hold up a mountain, heavily pressing down on the surrounding space. It was as if the entire space could not withstand this mountain and was about to collapse. This mountain's aura was not inferior to Muyu's heavenly sword at all, because Shihongi's strength and state were both better than Muyu's. In the blink of an eye, Muyu's sword chi rumbled from the sky and descended from the 9 heavens, slashing towards Shihongi, who was blocking in front of him. Meanwhile, the heavenly demon seal above Shihongi's head also surged with blood chi, pressing down on the sword chi in the sky. It was as if it wanted to compete with the sky. In the blink of an eye, the two collided. Suddenly, the earth shook again. Terrifying fluctuations swept out from the center of the two. The ground was completely destroyed and cracked. A nearby mountain range was directly razed to the ground. This loud noise had already attracted many self-cultivators in the Mayan mountain range, but none of them dared to come over because the overall strength of the self-cultivators in the Mayan mountain range was relatively low. Even though the immortal confinement prison had been lifted and the spirit energy had been restored, there were less than 10 people who had stepped into the nascent soul stage in the past few years. The nascent soul stage was not worth mentioning in front of this kind of battle. Muyu's sword Shi and Shihongi's heavenly devil seal collided. Clearly, Shihongi's heavenly devil seal was stronger. Muyu's face was already very pale. After using his domain ability, the spirit Shi in his body was unable to maintain the power of the heavenly sword. However, what was worse was that there was still Guku behind him. Soul Technique Luo In, Thousand Demon Sacred Beast. Guku already hated Muyu to the bone. Just now, when he was facing the village chief's Thunder Dust Thunder Art attack, half of his body was destroyed by the overbearing thunder and lightning. His strength was greatly reduced, but even so, he was still an existence that could not be underestimated. Suddenly, countless soul power rushed out from the 10 soul pearls in front of his chest. These soul powers quickly formed a huge, ferocious, demonic beast in the air, which was hundreds of feet tall. This demonic beast looked like it was made up of countless demonic beasts. It had a brutal, fierce wind tiger head, arrogant chi feng eagle wings, and its entire body was covered in scales. It had 9 tails that were hundreds of feet long, and each tail was different. It had 6 legs, and each leg was made up of a different demonic beast's claws. This ferocious beast that was completely formed by soul power seemed to have gathered the body parts of the most powerful demonic beasts. It looked crazy and terrifying. The Thousand Demon Sacred Beast attacked Muyu from behind the moment Muyu's sword Chi slashed down. Village Chief Oldbu turned his head and saw the overwhelming number of demonic beasts. He was scared witless, but he didn't know where he got the courage to shout, "Don't hurt my family's Muyu!" Then, he let go of his hand and turned around, wanting to use his body to help Muyu block this terrifying giant beast. However, his body was incomparably small in front of this giant beast that was hundreds of feet tall. A single claw of the Thousand Demon Sacred Beast was several times bigger than him. The sharp eagle claw bore the brunt of the attack and clawed at Muyu's back. Village Chief Olbu was so scared that his legs went soft. However, he still wanted to use his body to block this demonic beast, just like when he brought Muyu out of Flowing Water Village and met the big gray bear in town. At this time, he really hoped that he still had the lightning art to help Muyu block this attack. Unfortunately, no matter how he urged it, there was no reaction from the lightning art in his body. However, Little Handsome, who was on Village Chief Olbu's shoulder, had already rushed out. "I hate it the most when you talk about sacred beasts. Disgusting." Little Handsome stretched out his little claw. His little claw was as thin as a cicada's wing. If one didn't look carefully, they wouldn't even be able to see it. However, Little Handsome's figure only leaped through the air, turning into a shadow. The palm-sized Little Handsome was nothing compared to the 100 feet tall demonic beast. However, it was precisely because of his small body that Little Handsome had the advantage. "I'll chop off your perverted pig hands," Little Commander yelled. His figure had already swept past the eagle claw at the front. Little Commander's claws were incomparably sharp, but it was just an illusion. That indomitable and indestructible eagle claw was actually severed by Little Commander and annihilated in the air. However, Little Handsome's figure didn't slow down. He continued to scurry around the 1,000 demonic beasts' claws and tail. In the blink of an eye, the originally majestic and incomparably tall 1,000 demonic beast was directly cut by Little Handsome until only its tail, limbs, and headless torso was left. What? Guku was shocked and furious. The powerful demonic beast that he summoned had an indestructible physique. Even a tribulation passing stage cultivator couldn't destroy it. However, he never thought that in front of this inconspicuous little beast, there would be no room for resistance. "Little guy, you want to compete with me with your claws?" You overestimate yourself. Little Handsome laughed proudly. However, Goku coldly snorted. Those broken limbs that Little Handsome cut off actually grew out from the 1,000 demonic beasts' wounds again, once again turning into a ferocious beast that blotted out the sky and covered the earth. And this time, Goku's soul power swept towards Little Handsome, directly sending him flying. Little Handsome, this fellow, other than speed, sharp claws, and thick skin, had no cultivation at all. There was no way he could deal with the tribulation passing stage, Goku alone. "Aye, little guy, where are you? Be careful," Village Chief Old Boo nervously shouted. He couldn't see where Little Handsome was swept to, and at this time, that ferocious giant beast once again descended towards Muyu. The wind heart linking formation appeared under Muyu's feet and wrapped around Little Handsome. An incomparably tyrannical sword chi also appeared in Little Handsome's body. "Old man fraud, cooperate with me." Little Handsome landed on Village Chief Old Boo's head from who knows where and whispered, "Okay, what should I do?" Village Chief Old Boo quickly said, "Raise your palms, just like when you used the Thunder Art." Little Handsome said, "But my immortal technique is already on cooldown." Village Chief Old Boo said straightforwardly, "Just raise your palms and use your ability to fool children. Otherwise, we will all be finished." Little Handsome quickly said. Village Chief Old Boo could only pretend to raise his palms like before and point them at Goku. He felt a little stupid, but there was no other way but to listen to Little Handsome's instructions. Little Handsome's mysterious thunderfall. Little Handsome shouted in a childish voice, and a giant thunder sword that was 100 feet long suddenly soared into the sky. As soon as this thunder sword appeared, thunder patterns flashed in the air, and all of them merged into Village Chief Old Boo's body, illuminating Village Chief Old Boo into a blue flash. "Fraud Flash, it's your turn," Little Handsome said. Village Chief Old Boo was stunned for a moment, and then he suddenly thought of something and shouted at Goku, "If you dare to touch my little Muyu, I will split your upper body today." As for the pretentiousness and whatnot, because he had done it often in the village, he was also very familiar with it. The inexplicable chi power came and went as he wished, as if he really had the thunder dust that could destroy heaven and earth once again. How can it be? You can still use the Thunder Art. When Goku saw the Thunder Art in Village Chief Old Boo's hands, he was scared out of his wits. Just now, the terrible Thunder Art had shattered his lower body, which really left a deep shadow on him. Seeing the blue formation pattern in Village Chief Old Boo's hands, he thought that Village Chief Old Boo still had the Thunder Art of a mortal and eye lay in his body, so he immediately turned around and ran away. The 1,000 demons, sacred beasts in the air, also retreated and stood in front of him, trying to block the coming Thunder Art of Village Chief Old Boo. In the blink of an eye, Goku had already jumped far away from Village Chief Old Boo, not daring to face Village Chief Old Boo's Thunder Art head-on. However, after he had escaped for a long distance, he realized that there was no terrifying shockwave that could destroy the heavens and earth behind him. He turned his head in bewilderment, only to find that the thunder mark on Village Chief Old Boo's body seemed to be somewhat different from before. Of course, the thunder pattern was different. Little Handsome was just pretending. The Thunder Sword had no power at all. It was just to gather the thunder pattern. Village Head Old Boo, on the other hand, kept his hand outstretched, and a smug smile appeared on his face. He was thinking about how to organize his speech after this calamity was over, and how he could brag to the little kids in the village about how he had scared away a powerful immortal master all by himself with a non-existent immortal technique. Oh no, it should be repelled. Repelled bravely and fearlessly. Little Tot, we will be invincible in the world if we cooperate. Village Chief Old Boo laughed. Of course, I like to play with the old man. Little Shuai sat on Village Chief Old Boo's shoulder. His little claws extended a huge lightning sword, and he kept waving it in the air. But Muyu shouted, "Little Handsome, I can't hold on anymore. You protect Grandpa Village Chief." When Little Handsome used the Wind Sun Heart linking formation, it consumed Muyu's spiritual power. Muyu didn't have much spiritual power in his body. At this time, a part of it was extracted and turned into the thunder pattern, so it was even more difficult for him. You actually tricked me. Chapter 965. Guka rushed over from afar, and Muyu's sword chi began to be unable to block Shihongi's heavenly devil seal, and was slowly collapsing. He clenched his teeth and pulled village chief. The huge sword chi in his hand instantly vanished into nothingness as he rushed to the side. The heavenly demon's seal instantly covered Muyu, and the void seemed to be about to be crushed. Muyu had already dodged very quickly, but he was still swept by the waves of the heavenly demon seal. He firmly protected the village chief, and the waves of the heavenly demon seal blasted on his back. He was heavily sent flying, and a trail of blood flowed out from the corner of his mouth. "Oh, Muyu, you're injured. It's all my fault. It's all my fault. I'm really useless. I can't protect you, and I even dragged you down." Village Chief Old Boo's excitement had already passed, and when he saw Muyu bleeding from the corner of his mouth, his heart ached, and he hurriedly reached out to wipe the blood off Muyu's face. Since he was young, he had treated Muyu as his own child. Now that he saw his child injured, he was extremely sad. "Don't blame Grandpa. Just now you helped me scare away that half-ghost man. Otherwise our situation would be even worse." The runes under Muyu's feet moved, and with the help of the impact of the heavenly devil seal, he readjusted his direction and quickly escaped. At this time, Guka's 1,000 devil sacred beast also came bearing its fangs and brandishing its claws. He was scared away by village chief Old Boo's non-existent thunder art, and now he was extremely angry. The 1,000 devil sacred beast came down from the sky, and a long demonic scorpion tail swept over. "Little scorpion, don't be so arrogant," Xiao Shuai shouted and jumped over to block Muyu. This time, he didn't have time to rush over and cut off the scorpion tail. Obviously, Guka had learned his lesson and directly threw it at Xiao Shuai, and Xiao Shuai once again crashed into Muyu's back. They once again used the powerful impact to distance themselves from Shi Hongyi and Guku. "It hurts." Xiao Shuai touched his butt and howled on Muyu's shoulder. "Little buddy and you're so powerful." When village chief Olbu saw that little Shuai had actually been hit by the terrifying scorpion tail, he only touched his butt and howled. There was no wound at all, so he was extremely shocked. Being praised like this, Xiao Shuai immediately puffed out his chest, as if his buttocks didn't hurt anymore. He said, "Old man, of course I'm awesome. Muyu, let's do it again. With the help of their momentum, we can run faster." With that said, little Shuai leaped off Muyu's shoulder and headed for the mountain-like sky devil seal. Its thick skin was indestructible and was specially made to withstand beatings. Muyu was also helpless. To be honest, when Xiao Shuai bumped into his back just now, he almost couldn't catch his breath. Being bumped was no joke, but in order not to worry the village chief, he forcefully suppressed the mouthful of blood. "Grandpa, hold on tight." Muyu turned around and carried the village chief on his back again. Both of his hands quickly drew a cyan-colored formation pattern in front of his chest, forming an 8 trigrams formation. When Xiao Shuai was once again sent flying by the Sky Devil Seal, this time Xiao Shuai bumped into the 8 trigrams formation in front of Muyu. The 8 trigrams formation's chaotic yin and yang immediately revolved and dissolved the huge impact into its own momentum to escape. And Muyu also didn't need to suffer as much as Xiao Shuai bumped into him. Only Xiao Shuai and Muyu could think of such a strange method, and only the two of them could do it, because Xiao Shuai was invulnerable to swords and spears. So far, there was nothing that could leave a wound on his body. This guy was not afraid of anything, even if he was steamed, roasted, struck by lightning, or boiled in boiling water. Even if Xiao Shuai couldn't block the 1,000 demon beasts, he would never be defeated. The terrifying attacks of the Sky Devil Seal and 1,000 demon beasts were all absorbed by Xiao Shuai, and Muyu only needed to use his formation to dissolve the impact of Xiao Shuai. Under this kind of situation, the two of them were actually able to escape at an extremely fast speed to an inconceivable degree. Thus, a strange phenomenon appeared in the sky. A little beast bravely cried out and rushed towards the 1,000 Zhang Sky Devil Seal and 1,000 demon beasts. Then, it miserably cried out and fell onto Mu Yu's body. Then, it sent Mu Yu and the others flying. It was as if an invisible big hand was constantly helping Mu Yu escape. This kind of phenomenon was extremely strange. "Xiao buddy, and are you okay?" Village chief Old Bu couldn't help but ask as he looked at Xiao Shuai, who was constantly being hit by the Sky Devil Seal and 1,000 demon beasts. "Not good, my butt hurts." Xiao Shuai rushed out again with a sullen face. Shi Hongyi and Gu Ku finally realized that something was wrong. Mu Yu had just used his domain ability and resisted Shi Hongyi's attack. The spirit energy in his body had long been consumed. His speed should not be comparable to theirs, but why did it feel like the more they chased after him, the faster Mu Yu ran? "Gu Ku, stop. They are cheating." Shi Hongyi roared. He also felt that it was unbelievable. After living for so long, he had never seen such a strange phenomenon. A little beast that was not afraid of death and had thick skin was really rare in the world. Gu Ku quickly stopped, and 1,000 demon beasts also disappeared. Mu Yu wanted to dissolve Xiao Shuai's huge impact, but also consumed a lot of spirit energy. At this time, he had been running all the way, and his spirit energy had been exhausted. He could not even maintain the 8 trigrams formation. The last time Xiao Shuai hit him, it directly shattered the 8 trigrams formation and hit Mu Yu's chest, breaking Mu Yu's ribs. Bang! Mu Yu and the others crashed into a beautiful mountain like sandbags. With a boom, they hit the ground. Mu Yu turned the village chief around in time and used the remaining spirit energy on the village chief to protect him. The whole mountain shook slightly, bringing up a cloud of dust. "Mu Yu, are you okay?" "You silly child. You should have let me cushion you." Village chief Old Bu got up from the ground with heartache and quickly helped Mu Yu up. Mu Yu panted heavily. He couldn't use any strength now, but he still forced a smile and said, "Grandfather, how can you cushion me? My bones will fall apart if you touch me." "You can still laugh at this time." "Ah, your bones are broken." Village chief Old Bu was so scared that his face turned ashen. But at this time, a whistling sound came from the sky. Gu Ku and Shi Hongyi both stopped in air and looked down at Mu Yu, who had fallen on the mountaintop. "This time, you won't be able to escape." Shi Hongyi sneered. Mu Yu had been forced to a dead end by them. He couldn't even move. Village chief Old Bu stood in front of Mu Yu and shouted angrily, "You bunch of white chicken spirits, if you dare to touch a single hair on my Mu Yu, I'll fight you to the death." For the sake of Mu Yu's safety, the old village head had already thrown his life away. Mu Yu struggled to sit up, pulled the village chief's clothes, and leaned against a rock. He caught his breath and said, "I didn't plan to run anymore." A formation pattern stretched out of his hand and merged with the ground. Then a formation pattern quietly drilled out of the ground and merged with village chief Old Bu's body. After doing all this, he breathed a sigh of relief. "It's best if you don't run, but I'll cripple your legs." Gu Ku's lower body was completely gone, and he bore a grudge against Mu Yu. As he spoke, 2 white soul beads appeared in his hand. The soul beads quickly smashed towards Mu Yu's legs. "No." Village chief Old Bu protected Mu Yu with all his might, but Mu Yu wasn't nervous at all. He only looked at Gu Ku with some ridicule. "I don't need to run. I don't think the 2 of you have figured out where this place is, right?" Mu Yu revealed a smile, not worried at all. Just as the soul beads were about to break Mu Yu's legs, the entire mountain suddenly trembled. Then the soul beads that fell from Gu Ku actually disappeared into the void. They disappeared into thin air without any foresight. The 2 soul beads actually lost contact with Gu Ku. How can this be? Gu Ku was shocked. The power of his attack was extremely great, and he had already predicted that Mu Yu wouldn't be able to resist it in his current state. However, the 2 soul beads that he used to attack had inexplicably disappeared. What was going on? That's not right. Something feels strange. Shi Hongyi felt that something was wrong, because under the impact of their terrifying power, even an ordinary mountain would be cut in half. However, when Mu Yu crashed heavily into the ground, he only smashed a large hole in the soil. The entire mountain only trembled slightly, and in the blink of an eye, nothing happened. Even the ground didn't crack. Not to mention that Guku's 2 soul beads had suddenly disappeared in front of Muyu. Muyu, I'm still alive, right? Village Chief Old Bu had originally used his body to block Muyu. He wanted to take the blow for Muyu, but after waiting for a long time, he didn't feel any pain. He thought that death had come too quickly, and he didn't even notice it. Muyu patted the village chief's shoulder and comforted him. "Grandpa, don't worry. We're alive and well, but this half-human ghost might not be. These 2 little white ghosts are dead for sure." Xiao Shuai climbed up from the ground with a dirty face and stood angrily on the big rock. He put his hands on his waist and shouted at Guku and Shihongi. "This is my home. You can't behave atrociously in my home." Muyu lay comfortably on the rock. Countless mellow spirit energy surged from the ground and gathered into his body. The black and white spirit energy also quickly healed his injuries. The surrounding scene was still so familiar, but the weeds grew a little more luxuriantly, and the trees were also very vigorous. A familiar smell assailed his nose, causing Muyu to be absent-minded. It was as if he had returned to the carefree time of the past. The carefree time when he cultivated and played with his fellow disciples. This was Luochen Mountain. Muyu had returned to Luochen Mountain. He had returned to his second home. He had been fleeing from Xiao Shuai along the way, but the escape route was very clear. If he couldn't return to Flowing Water Village, then in the entire Mayun mountain range, the safest place was Luochen Mountain. Chapter 966. In Muyu's heart, Luochen Mountain was a very important place to him. It carried many of his beautiful memories and was a holy land in his heart. He did not live in a sect where everyone tried to cheat each other, nor did he live in a sect where every disciple had to set each other up, flatter each other, form gangs, where those with high cultivation base scolded those with low cultivation base as trash, where they had to think of ways to kill their fellow disciples, and where they would kill each other for a few spirit stones and magical weapons. On the contrary, Muyu lived in a paradise. There was no fighting and scheming here. There was only an easygoing and kind master, a strict and old-fashioned Enshu who made terrible dishes, and mischievous and noisy fellow disciples who got along well with each other. Everyone helped each other, cultivated together, and caused trouble together. They were happy and played around. At night, they enjoyed the night breeze on the cliff and listened to their master tell them all kinds of interesting stories. Even after they grew up, every disciple of Luochen Mountain walked different paths because of their different beliefs. But in their hearts, there was something that they cared about, something that belonged to Luochen Mountain. Luochen Mountain was their roots. No matter how much they rebelled, they would never forget their fellow disciples at Luochen Mountain. They would never forget their master and uncle in at Luochen Mountain. They would do their best to protect everyone at Luochen Mountain. And Luochen Mountain was also protecting them. Not only did it carry everyone's feelings, it also had an incomparably powerful protective array set up by their master. After Muyu entered Luochen Mountain, the one thing that Guku and Shihongi shouldn't have done the least was to attack Muyu. The wind gently blew across Luochen Mountain. A mysterious power seemed to condense in the air. Countless array patterns appeared in the air. The soul bead that Guku had thrown at Muyu's broken leg was also reproduced. Its power was exactly the same as the one Guku had used, completely duplicating his opponent's attack. Whoosh! Whoosh! The soul beads drew 2 afterimages in the air and were already rushing towards Guku. How can this be? Guku was shocked. He didn't expect his attack to be reflected. What made him even more shocked and angry was that these 2 soul beads were clearly his soul techniques, but now they were uncontrollably attacking him. Bang! Guku summoned the soul orb beneath him in time to block the 2 soul orbs that had bounced back. After blocking them, the 2 soul orbs were back in his hands. What happened just now? Shihongi asked, puzzled. Whether it was Guku or Shihongi, the 2 of them had never seen such a strange phenomenon. Why did Guku's soul orb break free from his control in an instant? I don't know. This place gives me a very strange feeling. Guku said in a deep voice. The two of them weren't array masters, but they could see that the array technique seemed to be working. However, in their impression, array techniques had never been so strange. Of course, they didn't understand that Luochen Mountain was the place where Jian Ying and Chun Feng lived in seclusion. How could they allow a group of clowns to behave atrociously? "Grandpa, sit down and rest. It's okay." Mu Yu comforted him. Village Chief Old Bu climbed up from Mu Yu's body in bewilderment and turned to look at Mu Yu and Shi Hongi. He sat down beside Guku and Shi Hongi doubtfully and asked, "Mu Yu, are we going to sit here and wait for death?" "No, we're going to sit here and watch the show." Mu Yu laughed. The protective array formation of Luochen Mountain was very powerful. It was personally set up by his master. With the spiritual Qi, I, as the foundation of the array formation, it was extremely complicated. Although Mu Yu couldn't set up such a powerful array formation, he knew how to use it. When he first came here, he had integrated the village chief's aura into the array formation, allowing the array formation to accept the village chief. Xiao Shuai had already jumped onto the rock and provoked loudly, "You two little white ghosts, dirty and disgusting. Come over if you have the ability. Why don't you dare to make a move? Weren't you so arrogant just now? Why are you afraid now? You're really useless. If you're afraid, go home and find your master. You two rotten sweet potatoes and stinky bird eggs dare to make a move on us. You're courting death." Guku and Shi Hongi were instigated by Xiao Shuai, and their hearts were already full of anger. Just now, they couldn't catch up with Mu Yu, who was clearly a strong crossbow. Now, Xiao Shuai was pointing at their noses and scolding them. There was no need to mention how angry they were. "If you're courting death, then don't blame me." Guku was the first to be unable to stand it. His lower body had been struck by the thunder art just now. After being provoked by Xiao Shuai, the 10 soul orbs in front of him suddenly split into 2 again. Soul Technique Luo Yin, Thousand Demon Sacred Beast. The strange demon beast that was hundreds of feet tall once again appeared in the air. It bared its fangs and brandished its claws in the air above Luochen Mountain. Its huge claws seemed like they would tear the sky apart in an instant. The entire Luochen Mountain could be cut in half by its tail. The thousand-demon sacred beast roared angrily. All kinds of strange claws and tails covered the sky as they fell towards Mu Yu on Luochen Mountain. In order to take revenge, Guku had already used all his strength. In his opinion, Mu Yu and Xiao Shuai were just bluffing. However, just as the destructive demon beast's claws and tail were about to smash into Mu Yu's body, array patterns appeared in the air around Mu Yu. The array patterns surged and rippled. Then, the thousand-demon sacred beast disappeared into the void again, leaving no trace behind. Guku widened his eyes in disbelief. He found that he had lost control of the soul orbs again. Soul Technique Luo Yin, Heavenly Demon Seal. Shi Hongi shouted. The mountain-like heavenly demon seal grew in the wind. It was much taller than the entire Luochen Mountain. This heavenly demon seal would probably crush everything wherever it smashed. In his eyes, no matter how powerful Luochen Mountain was, it would absolutely not be able to withstand his full strength attack. However, a ripple appeared in the sky above Luochen Mountain again. The heavenly demon seal smashed down from the sky as if it had smashed into a bottomless pit. It was completely devoured, and no soul power was left behind. Shi Hongi's face was also filled with disbelief. The scene in front of him was too unbelievable. If an indestructible barrier had appeared in Luochen Mountain to block this attack, he might have reluctantly accepted it. However, it was just a ripple, and his attack had completely disappeared. Guku and Shi Hongi were already beginning to panic. They had killed countless people in the cultivation world and encountered any unexpected situations, but they had never encountered such a situation. Their attacks had actually disappeared without a trace. This was really unreasonable. However, what surprised them even more was that the two of them had been firmly locked onto by a familiar and dangerous aura. It was dangerous because the power of this aura was comparable to their own. It was familiar because this aura came from the same source as them. An 8 trigrams array appeared in front of Mu Yu. The 8 trigrams array had his hands as the center and was moving subtly. The array patterns around Luochun Mountain rippled out and interconnected with Mu Yu's 8 trigrams array. In the past, I wasn't an array master, so I didn't know how to control this array. However, it's different now. Mu Yu looked indifferently at Guku and Shihongi. Mu Yu had learned the array, and the array here also sealed Mu Yu's aura, so Mu Yu didn't need to deduce it. Everything flowed naturally, and he naturally knew how to control this array. Although he hadn't recovered much of his spiritual energy, he didn't rely on his own spiritual energy to control the array formation. He was only temporarily acting as the array core of the array formation, so he could control the spells that were absorbed by the array formation. Our Luochun Mountain doesn't like foreign trash, so it's better to return it to you. Mu Yu moved his fingertips, and Shihongi's heavenly devil seal and Guku's 1,000 demonic beasts suddenly appeared in the air, locking onto themselves at the same time. The only difference was that Shihongi's heavenly devil seal locked onto Guku, and the 1,000 demonic beasts locked onto Shihongi. If no one was controlling the mountain protecting array, it would only automatically return the spell to the caster. However, under Mu Yu's deliberate control, he swapped the spells of the two people. Guku looked at the heavenly demon seal in shock. The power of the heavenly demon seal was exactly the same as the one Shihongi had used just now. There was no more power or less power. It was a real soul technique from Shihongi. "Shihongi, what are you doing?" Guku roared. His cultivation couldn't compare to Shihongi's, and now that he was seriously injured, how could he block Shihongi's heavenly devil seal? When he saw the heavenly devil seal falling towards him, he immediately wanted Shihongi to take it back. However, the soul spell had already escaped their control. Shihongi didn't have any ability to control the heavenly devil seal that suddenly appeared in the air. When he wanted to block his soul spell, Guku's 1,000 demonic beasts pounced on him. Even if Guku's 1,000 demonic beasts weren't his match, if he didn't deal with his 1,000 demonic beasts, he would definitely be seriously injured. Without thinking too much, he waved his hand and raised his powerful soul power to block the 1,000 demonic beasts. Boom! Shihongi could block Guku's 1,000 demonic beasts, but Guku wasn't so lucky. Guku's cold sweat had already fallen. He gritted his teeth and wanted to block Shihongi's heavenly devil seal. Unfortunately, the heavenly devil seal was incomparably powerful in his eyes, far beyond what he could bear. With an unwilling scream, the upper half of Guku's body was directly smashed by the heavenly devil seal. His entire body seemed to have cracked open, revealing white soul power all over his body, as if it was about to seep out. Following that, an earth-shaking sound rang out. Guku was directly blown into thousands of pieces, and even his soul was directly annihilated under the heavenly devil seal. By the time Shihongi wanted to help, it was already too late. He could only watch as Guku died at the hands of his heavenly devil seal. After the heavenly devil seal destroyed Guku, the remaining fluctuations flowed out and blasted into the distant mountains, raising the outer mountains of Luochun Mountain to the ground. Following that, the heavenly devil seal turned back into a soul bead and re-established a connection with Shihongi. How could this be? Shihongi was furious. Even though he had regained control of the heavenly devil seal, he still couldn't calm down. Guku's death had a huge impact on him. How could he have thought that this mountain would be so strange? Those who offend my Luochun Mountain will be punished by all evils. Chapter 9:67. Village Chief Oldbu was also so scared that he couldn't close his mouth for a long time. He pulled his beard twice, and after confirming that this was not a dream, he shouted in relief, "You two white chicken spirits, you even fought among yourselves. You deserve to die." Although Village Chief Oldbu was only a mortal, he knew who the Great Seal of Mountains and the ferocious demonic beast belonged to. Guku had died under Shihongi's Great Seal of Mountains. He didn't know the mystery of this mountain, so he took it for granted that the two of them were fighting each other for credit. Shihongi's face was already distorted. He looked at Mu Yu with resentment, but he didn't dare to make a move again. However, at this time, a terrifying aura instantly enveloped the entire Luochen mountain, and the Deshang stage palace envoy had already appeared beside Shihongyi. Bastard! The palace envoy's face was very ugly. He had just been entangled by the Sea Demon King's domain ability for a moment, and when he rushed over, he just happened to see Shihongyi's heavenly demon seal destroy Guku and kill his own people. "My lord, this is not my..." Shihongyi quickly explained. It was true that Guku died at the hands of his heavenly demon seal, but the heavenly demon seal, just now, was not controlled by him at all. The palace envoy also didn't know the mystery of Luochen Mountain. To be honest, even Bai Jie didn't know about the powerful mountain-protecting array of Luochen Mountain. He only saw Shihongyi's heavenly demon seal kill Guku, but didn't see what happened before. The palace envoy's face was gloomy as he angrily rebuked. "I asked you to capture the two of them, not to kill your own people. If it weren't for the lack of manpower now, I would definitely not forgive you." Shihongyi felt that he couldn't defend himself. He could only swallow his anger and stare at Muyu with resentment, as if he wanted to cut Muyu into pieces. Muyu was a little scared in his heart. The mountain-protecting Great Array could block the Crossing Calamity stage, but he didn't know if it could block the Deshang stage palace envoy. After all, when the Deshang stage palace envoy made a move, they had the ability of a domain, and he didn't know if the mountain-protecting Great Array could simulate the characteristics of a domain. If it couldn't, then things would be tricky. The palace envoy gloomily looked at the two people who were sitting against a rock. He was extremely annoyed. He had thought that since he had come personally and brought two extreme celestials with him, even if Muyu had appeared, he would have a high chance of winning. However, he didn't expect that Muyu would have so many tricks up his sleeves. Just now, he had even relied on the Sea Demon King's domain power to forcefully obstruct him for a while. This time, let's see what else you can do, the palace emissary said coldly. He could also see that Muyu was already at his wit's end and could not do anything else. Shihongyi hurriedly said, "Sir, this place is strange. There's a strange array here that can absorb..." "Shut up. Don't find excuses for your failure." The palace emissary did not want to listen to Shihongyi's explanation. Today, he was very annoyed by Muyu. In any case, he was a dignified Mahayana stage cultivator. He had personally dispatched people, but not only did he not catch the ninth person of eternal life, he was also repeatedly disrupted by Muyu. Now that he saw that Muyu and the ninth person of eternal life had been forced into a desperate situation, his patience had already reached its limit. He only wanted to catch Muyu and the ninth person of eternal life so that he could report back to the palace emissary. Shihongyi was at a loss after being scolded. He wanted to remind the palace emissary that there was a trap in the array here. However, the palace emissary was already dissatisfied, so he tactfully shut his mouth. He thought that with the palace emissary's Mahayana stage strength, he should not be restricted by Muyu's array. "Are you two going to surrender yourselves, or do you want me to do it myself?" The palace emissary said coldly. "Idiot! Where do you get the confidence to say these words? Don't you think it's ridiculous when you say this sentence? Can't you say something new? Why do you have to talk nonsense? Annoying." Little Shuai scolded unceremoniously. The palace emissary's face twitched, and the power of the domain erupted. The space seemed to be crushed, and the entire Luochen mountain trembled slightly, as if it was under great pressure. Muyu's face was solemn. Although he could barely control the mountain-protecting great array set up by his master, he was not completely familiar with the overall situation of the mountain-protecting great array. He was not very clear, so it was not clear whether it could withstand the attack of a Mahayana stage expert. At this time, the palace emissary's wild 7 unique skills burst out. 7 huge white snakes poked their heads out of the air and surrounded Luochen Mountain from all directions. Then, they bit down on Muyu together, wanting to tear down the entire Luochen Mountain. There was a loud explosion in the air, and the spirit energy became restless. Luochen Mountain seemed to have experienced an earthquake. It was already in a precarious situation under the pressure of the Mahayana stage. Muyu could not move. Even if he moved, he could not escape at all. "Buzz! A golden formation pattern rushed out from the bottom of the mountain. The golden formation pattern enveloped Luochen Mountain as if it was plated with a layer of film. Then, Muyu was delighted. He already understood what this golden formation pattern represented. Formation technique, so close, yet worlds apart. He did not expect that his master had hidden so close, yet worlds apart here. This formation was at the bottom of Luochen Mountain. Even Muyu did not notice it at first. The palace emissaries' wild 7 unique skills pounced on Luochen Mountain from different directions. The 7 huge snake heads covered half the sky. They kept biting down, and the downward momentum did not weaken. However, they were unable to break through the golden formation pattern. It was clearly just a short distance away, but it seemed to be at the end of the earth. At this time, the mountain protecting great array of Luochen Mountain flashed out again. This time, Muyu did not control it, because so close, yet worlds apart was activated by the formation technique. The ability of the mountain protecting great array was beyond the scope of Muyu's control. Ripples appeared in the sky above Luochen Mountain and merged into the golden formation pattern. Then, it swallowed up the palace emissary's wild 7 unique skills. What? The palace emissary was deeply shocked. However, at this time, the mountain protecting great array moved again. The wild 7 unique skills have been transferred out. The 7 huge snake heads that originally surrounded Luochen Mountain actually appeared around the palace emissary. This time, the target of the 7 snake heads was changed to the palace emissary. Damn it! The palace emissary was almost caught unprepared. However, he was a great ascension stage expert after all. Moreover, he was very familiar with his own techniques and knew how to escape the wild 7 unique skills. He reached out and tore the void, pulling Shihongi away. Then, the 7 huge snake heads fiercely collided in the air, letting out an earth-shattering roar. Billowing waves of air swept out. These waves swept out, and the periphery of Luochen Mountain had been turned into nothingness. However, the inside of Luochen Mountain was completely intact. So close, yet worlds apart's formation had blocked all of the violent waves. The palace emissary and Shihongi both appeared in a distressed state in the distance. The palace emissary finally understood what Shihongi wanted to say. This Luochen Mountain's formation was quite terrifying. It could actually absorb their soul technique and imitate it again. Muyu breathed a sigh of relief again. He didn't expect that in order to protect everyone in Luochen Mountain, his master had laid down so many powerful protective formations. His heart was extremely moved. Even though Luochen Mountain had changed, this place was still a harbor, waiting for them to return home at any time, sheltering them from the wind and rain. Lord Palace Emissary, Gu-Ku was killed just like this. Shihongi saw that the palace emissary had almost suffered a loss and finally had the confidence to explain the reason. Otherwise, it would be difficult for him to explain why Gu-Ku died under his heavenly demon seal. The palace emissary's face was gloomy. The strength of this mountain protecting formation was far beyond his imagination. Before coming here, Bai Jie had warned him that Moya Mountain Range was not a simple place. Now that he thought about it, it was more than not simple. It was simply a hard bone to chew. Flowing Water Village was set up with a formation that blocked the entrance of the 3-layered palace. The 9th person with eternal life had a powerful thunder art domain protecting him. Even if the people in Moyun Mountain Range were killed by them, they wouldn't be able to produce soul power for them to use. Not to mention, there was such an extremely strange mountain that could intercept his Mahayana stage domain ability. Little guy, how can you bunch of jumping white chicken spirits have any ideas about the things left behind by my white-bearded old man? Hurry up and go back. Little Shuai put his hands on his waist and scolded arrogantly. That's right. You bunch of white chicken spirits have done all kinds of evil. You gone too far. Do you really think we're so easy to bully? Village Chief Old Bu also stood up and straightened his back. He and Little Shuai pointed at the palace emissary and Shihongi and scolded. The two of them weren't injured just now. Village Chief Old Bu was just frightened, and Little Shuai was thick-skinned and couldn't be killed. Therefore, The two of them were full of energy and began to provoke the palace emissary back to vent the bad luck of being chased. Compared to the two of them, Muyu wasn't in the mood to provoke the maggots of the three-layered palace. He sat cross-legged on the spot and quickly absorbed the surrounding spiritual power to heal the injuries in his body. There were many spirit-gathering formations in Luochen Mountain that could be used. Muyu knew how to activate the spirit-gathering formations. The palace emissary and Shihongi's faces were very angry, but they didn't dare to act rashly. With the previous example, they knew that Muyu and the ninth person with eternal life had already entered the safe zone. They couldn't do anything to them anymore. The palace emissary pondered for a moment. It was impossible for them to thoroughly study Jian Ying and Shun Feng's formations. He then said to Shihongi, "Go back and ask the Lord. Ask the Lord to tell us how to break this formation. Tell the Lord about the situation here and let the Lord make the decision." "Yes, Lord." Shihongi accepted the order and didn't ask anything else. He just fiercely glared at the old and small beast who were cursing at Luochen Mountain before leaving. "It doesn't matter. I have plenty of time to waste with you. I can't do anything to you, but you can't escape either." The palace emissary coldly snorted. He sat cross-legged on the void formation and watched Muyu's every move. The palace emissary was ready to wait. As long as Muyu and the ninth person with eternal life left Luochen Mountain, they definitely wouldn't be able to escape his grasp. Little Shuai went and asked, "Muyu, if Bai Jie personally comes, can our formation still hold?" "I'm not sure." Chapter 968. It had been a long time since anyone lived in Luochen Mountain. Many places were covered with weeds, but the thatched huts on Luochen Mountain were still there. Even the furnishings inside hadn't changed. Muyu relied on the spirit-gathering formation of Luochen Mountain and his abnormal recovery ability of black and white spirit power. It only took him a day to recover. However, he couldn't leave Luochen Mountain now because once he left the protection of Luochen Mountain, he would have to face the Grand Ascension Stage Palace Envoy. With Muyu's current cultivation, it was impossible for him to defeat the Palace Envoy. On Luochen Cliff, Muyu and village chief Oldbu were sitting under the old banyan tree, looking into the distance. "You massacred an entire city?" Village chief Oldbu was shocked. This news scared him quite a bit. "This isn't true, is it?" Village chief Oldbu found it hard to accept this fact. In the stories he and the other children told in the past, Muyu is a great hero who saved people. How could such a person do such a terrible thing as massacring an entire city? "It's true, so I hope grandfather can understand what kind of person I am. I don't want to hide it from you." Muyu smiled bitterly. Telling the truth was a very cruel thing, but he had to do it. Only by telling the truth could he pass the heart tribulation. Village chief Old Boo was a little flustered. But how could you do such a thing? You promised me that you would be a good immortal master to fight against Yaman." The village chief still couldn't believe that the kind child of the past would do such a terrible thing. That was an entire city of people. Especially when village chief Olbu heard that when Yaman attacked Dongsha City, Muyu didn't choose to help the people of Dongsha City and instead massacred all the cultivators. His mouth almost couldn't close. Muyu was silent for a moment and said, "I can't be a good immortal master. Maybe it's because I grew up and saw a lot of things. Grandfather, I'm sorry." As people grew older and saw more of the ways of the world, many of their views would change. Their childhood dreams would eventually be shattered by reality, and they would embark on a different path. Xiao Shuai interrupted. "Old faker, think about it. If those Dongsha City self-cultivators hadn't gone overboard, how could Muyu have killed them? If you ask me, they only have themselves to blame. In order to survive, they wanted to send Muyu and Yaman to their deaths. Do you think that was the right thing to do?" When the old village chief heard that, he clenched his fists and said angrily, "The people of Eastern Sand City want you to die. How could they have such thoughts? You could have saved them." Muyu calmly replied, "When I was young, I thought I could save the world. But when I grew up, I realized that not everyone was worth saving. The only people I can save are those I care about." A cool breeze blew through the banyan tree on Luochin Cliff, rustling it. The warm sunlight shone through the branches and leaves, sprinkling the two of them with scattered light. It was comfortable and natural. For a moment, no one spoke. Village Chief Olbu looked at Mu Yu uneasily. He hesitated for a moment and then asked, "When you do something, you will definitely consider whether you are doing the wrong thing or not, right?" Mu Yu took a deep breath and then nodded. "I don't think it was wrong to kill them." Village Chief Olbu closed his eyes. His expression was slightly puzzled, but in the end, he smiled and patted Mu Yu's shoulder. "Since you think it was right, then I won't bother about it. Because when little Mu Yu does things, I'm very assured. Just like when Village Chief Olbu chose to believe in Mu Yu after learning of Mu Yu's ability to control wood, now Village Chief Olbu also believed in Mu Yu." A warm current spread in Mu Yu's heart. The power that had been sealed in his body for a long time finally began to circulate around his meridians. The aura of the Tribulation Realm also spread out, but it was forcefully concealed by Mu Yu. He didn't want to reveal his cultivation in front of Village Chief Olbu. Even though he was now a young man and had great strength in the cultivation world, in front of Village Chief Olbu, he was just a child. "Thank you, Grandpa." Mu Yu's worries finally disappeared. When facing enemies, Mu Yu had learned to kill decisively. But when facing people close to him, he was an optimistic child. It didn't matter if he could never grow up. He knew how to choose. "So you said that I'm the 9th person with eternal life. Does this mean that I won't die?" Village Chief Olbu said thoughtfully. "Yes, Grandpa. As long as you don't suffer a fatal injury, you can live forever. So everyone will do their best to protect you." "I will also do my best to protect you," Mu Yu said seriously. Then, Mu Yu asked curiously, "To be honest, Grandpa Village Chief, how long have you lived?" Village Chief Olbu stroked his beard and blinked. "I'm 121 years old this year. No wonder I've lived for so long. I thought it was because of my good living habits. I go to bed early and wake up early every day. I have a regular life. When people ask me about my health secrets, I tell them that I have to get up and do morning exercises every morning. It's good for the body. My body stopped aging when I was 70 years old. I always believed that it was because I did morning exercises." Mu Yu burst out laughing. When he was young, Village Chief Olbu would gather everyone to do morning exercises before telling them a story. He would ask them to stretch their legs, shake their hands, and shake their butts. He also shouted the slogan, "Do morning exercises. It's good for the body. You won't get old if you jump around." When he was young, he learned it quite well. The other children also learned it very seriously. Now that he thought about it, it seemed that he had been fooled again. In short, people with eternal life are very important to this world. Those white chicken spirits want to harm you, so you can't have any accidents. Mu Yu said seriously, "Then why didn't you tell me earlier? If you had warned me earlier, I wouldn't have been tricked out of Flowing Water Village." Village Chief Olbu said unhappily, "Grandpa, because this matter is very important, and you're immortal. I was worried that you would get carried away by telling stories to the children every day. Usually, cultivators would go to every village to look for people with spiritual roots that can cultivate. If this matter were to spread to the ears of cultivators, wouldn't it be even more troublesome? So at that time, I thought about it and decided not to tell you." Mu Yu explained. Village Chief Olbu's face turned red. He smiled a little awkwardly. He realized that Mu Yu's worries were not without reason. Moreover, you're always so respectful of cultivators. Even if you knew about this matter at that time, when Sanchong Palace sent people to deceive you and say that something happened to me, you would definitely believe them without hesitation, right? So it didn't matter if I told you or not." Mu Yu smiled. When Village Chief Olbu heard that Mu Yu had been bewitched by Yumon, he immediately panicked and directly believed the words of the white-clothed cultivator. That was why so many unnecessary things happened. "I was worried about you," Village Chief Olbu muttered. Actually, as long as Village Chief Olbu didn't leave Flowing Water Village, nothing would happen to him. This was because Mu Yu's master had arranged a very powerful array, which was specially used to guard against the people of Sanchong Palace. Moreover, at that time, Mu Yu didn't think too much about it. He thought that Sanchong Palace would never think that the ninth person with immortality was in Mayan mountain range. Unfortunately, the people of Sanchong Palace were too powerful. They were still discovered by the other party. Of course, I know you were worried about me. You're worried about me. It's good that you're fine. I'll protect you well in the future. Muyu smiled. Village Chief Oldbu raised Muyu. Muyu also respected Village Chief Oldbu very much. However, Village Chief Oldbu suddenly shouted, if I don't die, then won't you die? Then won't I have to send off my own child in the future? Village Chief Oldbu looked at Muyu with sad eyes. It was as if Muyu was already lying in a coffin with a heartbroken look. In his mind, the scene of him lying on Muyu's coffin and crying bitterly appeared. Muyu felt goosebumps all over his body when he was stared at by Village Chief Oldbu. He touched his head and felt a headache coming on. Grandpa, I'm still alive. Don't be sad. You should wait until I'm dead to make such an expression. Xiao Shuai also laughed. Besides, Muyu is also a person with immortality. So Muyu is also a person with immortality. What a coincidence. That's great. This way, when the two of us are old, we can sit in the village and take turns telling stories to the children. You tell stories on the first day of every month, and I'll tell stories on the second day of every month. Village Chief Oldbu's sad expression was swept away. In the blink of an eye, he was beaming with joy again. Muyu rubbed his temples. He felt a little dazed. Village Chief Oldbu's thought process was too fast. Luckily, it was Muyu. If it was anyone else, they wouldn't be able to keep up with Village Chief Oldbu's thoughts. If there's a chance, I'll accompany you to tell stories. Muyu smiled. He didn't tell Village Chief what he was going to do in the future. Village Chief Oldbu didn't know what Muyu was thinking, but he showed an excited expression. All right, you said that I can't die. Can I be like you and become an immortal master? I realized that I liked the battle of wits with those white chicken spirits just now. Village Chief Oldbu stretched out his hands again as if he was going to release the thunder art. Although the situation yesterday was urgent, he had at least satisfied the addiction of being an immortal. Unfortunately, the thunder art domain in his body had been used up. Grandpa wants to be an immortal master? Muyu was stunned. Yes, I'm already a person with immortality. Can't I be an immortal master? This way, I'll have a long time to become stronger like you. Grandpa can be your disciple. Village Chief Oldbu's eyes were filled with eagerness. It was quite interesting to be the disciple of a child he raised. Muyu hesitated for a moment, but still said, Grandpa, you can't be an immortal master. When Muyu found out that Village Chief was the ninth person with immortality, he was also shocked. He wanted to find a way to guide Village Chief Oldbu's cultivation so that he could protect himself. However, when Muyu secretly checked Village Chief Oldbu's body, he found that Village Chief Oldbu couldn't cultivate. Although he had an immortal body and his body had reached a perfect balance of the 5 elements, his meridians were the same as mortals. They couldn't withstand spiritual power. This meant that Village Chief Oldbu could live forever as long as he wasn't injured. However, he could only be immortal forever. Chapter 969. That old man's body is really weird. He has a perfect body of 5 elements, but he can't cultivate. Little Shuai muttered, I thought I could become an immortal master with such a powerful immortal skill. Village Chief Oldbu was very disappointed. He scratched his palm in the void formation and said, I'm starting to like the feeling of releasing thunder and lightning to hit people. He had been telling the children in the village about the immortal master's various flying and underground abilities. He was very eager to become an immortal master. Who didn't want to have the ability to break cliffs and move mountains and fill seas? Grandpa Village Chief, it's good to be an immortal mortal. Muyu comforted him. If the village head could cultivate, whether it was Jianing, Chunfeng, or Inai Leijianren, they would teach him. Muyu wouldn't have to worry about it all. They also wouldn't need to use all kinds of powerful formations to protect the village head. The reason why Reverend Inai Lei had directed him to Village Chief Oldbu was because the formations set up by Jianing and Chunfeng needed to be maintained. Reverend Inai Lei was not familiar with formations, so he had given this task to Muyu. Thinking of all the immortals today, each of them had a ridiculously high cultivation, but the village chief was a very special case. He couldn't cultivate, as if fate was playing a joke on him. But the village chief soon laughed and said, "It doesn't matter. If I can't become an immortal master, then I can't. My biggest interest is to tell the story of my Mu to more children in the village." Hundreds of immortals knelt down to me that day. I can brag again. Oh no, I can tell inspirational stories again. Well, yes, inspirational stories. They knelt down to me because I'm a person of virtue and prestige. Although village chief Olbu said so, Muyu still saw a trace of disappointment in the village chief's eyes. All mortals wanted to be an immortal master. This was something they dreamed of, and village chief Olbu was no exception. Muyu looked at Grandpa Village Chief and felt very uncomfortable. Every time a self-cultivator from a village came to recruit children who met the requirements for cultivation, village head Olbu would be submissive to those self-cultivators. He was the most indispensable person in this world, but he was unable to raise his head in front of others. "Grandpa, isn't it just being an immortal master? Wait, I'll think of something." Muyu suddenly had the thought of helping village chief Olbu fulfill his wish. "You can make me an immortal master?" Village chief Olbu asked excitedly. "I can let you use all kinds of array techniques," Muyu explained. He took out a powerful innate formation base and infused a sword chi into the jade pendant, using the formation to imprison it. Then, he spent more than an hour modifying the formation. He also considered other unexpected situations and took into account the flaws of the formation. Just as Venerable Ni Lei and Sword Shadow Chenfeng had quietly sealed their field domain ability in village chief Olbu's body, Muyu could also do it with the help of the formation. He pondered for a while and handed the jade pendant to village chief Olbu. "Grandpa, you could try this jade pendant. As long as you pinch this position of the jade pendant, there will be an unexpected effect," Muyu said. Village chief Olbu pinched the jade pendant suspiciously. Suddenly, a powerful sword chi burst out from the jade pendant in his hand and slashed out 10 feet long. With a whistling sound, a section of the banyan tree in front of him was instantly destroyed. The power of this sword was not weaker than that of a spirit-severing stage cultivator. This works?" Village chief Olbu opened his mouth wide. Muyu patted the banyan tree trunk, and the cut banyan tree grew again. Then, he said with a smile, "Grandpa, don't worry. Although you can't cultivate, I can let you have countless magic treasures, which will be more powerful than anyone else." As the master of the Formation Talisman sect, he didn't lack array bases. As long as village chief Olbu was willing, Muyu could even find thousands of array bases and engrave them with all kinds of powerful array techniques for village chief Olbu to play with. Then this sword chi can only be used once. Village chief Olbu pinched the jade pendant again, and the jade pendant burst out at his second sword chi. Village chief Olbu immediately smiled. "How many times can it be used?" "Yes, I think this sword chi can be used about 10 times. But after 10 times, it needs to slowly recover its spirit chi. Just like what you said last time, immortal techniques have a cooldown period. After I modify the array technique, it can be used for 3 hours." Muyu explained. He couldn't arrange the array technique perfectly in a hurry, so he still needed time to perfect it. In order to satisfy village chief Olbu's wish, Muyu decided to go all out. His array technique was not what it used to be. In the cultivation world, even Zhuge Shaosheng couldn't surpass him in array technique. He could forcibly use the force of nature to arrange the array technique. With the help of the force of nature and Muyu's transformation, even an unarmed mortal could launch a powerful array technique without spiritual power. These were the inspirations of the thunder incantation carved by Muyu's master and immortal Ni Lei. Thinking about it, Muyu was probably the only person in the world who could use the power of nature to arrange a formation for his grandfather to relieve his boredom. Wow, do you have any other powerful immortal techniques? Village chief Olbu's eyes lit up. He couldn't be an immortal master, but he could be an old con man. He could use these things to scare children. Grandpa, what other magic do you want? You can think of it, and I can satisfy you. Muyu said with confidence. Let me think, is the invisibility spell okay? Yes. Transformation spell. Last time I told the children in the village that Muyu can change 72 times. Yes, not to mention 72 times, even 1,000 times is not a problem. The transformation spell was equivalent to the illusion spell, which was not a problem for Muyu at all. Great. What about the wall passing spell? It's a bit difficult, but it can be done. You can use the teleportation spell to directly move behind the wall. Muyu thought of the Big Dipper constellation formation. At worst, he could spend more effort to move the Big Dipper constellation formation into the jade pendant. That's possible. That's great. Let me think. Is there any magic weapon that can make me run very fast? The Gale spell, it can be done. I think that even the spirit severing stage can't catch up with you. Muyu explained in detail the division of cultivation realms to village chief Old Boo. You mean the immortal masters I saw in the past who came to various villages to recruit people were all in the foundation establishment stage? Only in the second stage? Muyu, what's your current stage? Village chief Old Boo asked. Thanks to you, Grandpa, I'm already in the crossing calamity stage, which is the 8th stage. Muyu explained. He didn't show his strength of the crossing calamity stage. He just suppressed it like a mortal so that village chief Old Boo wouldn't feel any pressure. Wow. Then what stage can the formation spell you just gave me defeat? Village chief Old Boo asked in amazement. Let me think, the 6th stage, the spirit severing stage, should be no problem. The 7th stage, the combination stage, is a bit difficult. But Grandpa, if you think it's not enough, I can spend more time and make the formation spell. It's not a problem to defeat the combination stage cultivators. Muyu said, Enough, enough. You said that the most powerful cultivator in the Moyun Mountain Range is the 4th stage, the nascent soul stage. Then with your magic weapons, I can do whatever I want in the Moyun Mountain Range. Haha, I'm a local tyrant of the Moyun Mountain Range. Village Chief Old Boo was so happy that his wrinkles stretched out. You're more than a local tyrant. Old man, you're the savior of the 3rd heaven. Anyone can die, but you can't. Xiao Shui reminded. Yes, I'm the savior, haha. I didn't expect that Old Boo, would be so powerful one day. Village Chief Old Boo waved the jade pendant in his hand and threw out another sword chi. Chapter 970. Muyu looked at Village Chief Old Boo's excited face and sighed in his heart. In the past, Village Chief Old Boo was always submissive in front of the immortal masters of other villages. Now that Muyu was here, all the self-cultivators in the cultivation world had to lower their heads in front of Village Chief Old Boo. Grandpa, don't worry. If I want to be an immortal master that no one dares to provoke. Muyu said. He had a lot of resources in his hands. He could tailor a powerful formation technique for Village Chief Old Boo to protect himself. Good. Thanks to Muyu, Grandpa will be an immortal master that no one dares to provoke. Village Chief Old Boo laughed happily. Muyu said again, Grandpa, if we can safely leave this place this time, I won't leave you alone in Flowing Water Village. I want to take you to other places. This place is no longer safe. The palace envoy was still outside Luochen Mountain. Since the people of Sanchong Palace had found this place, it would be unwise for Village Chief Old Boo to stay in Moyun Mountain Range. That means I can't tell stories to children anymore. Village Chief Old Boo was stunned. Don't worry. Muyu plans to send you to the Array sect. You can go and fool those Array masters. They are all Muyu subordinates. Xiao Shui said casually. Can I? Muyu. Village Chief Old Boo asked excitedly. He had always been like an old urchin and liked to fool people. Yes, you can. Muyu smiled and nodded. The Array sect was now the safest place. With Zhuge Xiaosheng protecting the village chief, Muyu was also relieved. That's great. I have to quickly record this adventure down. This time, I'm going to change the story of the 3 dozen white chicken spirits. Village Chief Old Boo waved his jade pendant and threw out another sword chi. He didn't care at all. All right, this sword chi can hurt people, so when you're fooling people, be careful. Muyu reminded. I know. Village Chief Old Bu nodded. Muyu looked at Village Chief Old Bu playing with 7 or 8 jade pendants that he had just set up. At this time, he was using the jade pendants to fly around in the air. He felt helpless. Xiao Shuai had nothing to do, so he ran to the back of the mountain and said that he wanted to pick some fruits to eat. When he came back, he had already transformed into a child, which gave Old Bu a fright. Where did you come from? Old Village Chief Old Bu quickly asked. Oh, that's right. He is. Muyu remembered that she hadn't told the village chief about Little Shuai's transformation. Little Shuai had always been in the form of a small beast. Village Chief Old Bu hadn't seen Little Shuai's human form. Before Muyu could finish, Village Chief Old Bu cried out in joy. He is your son? You have a child. You didn't even tell me about this. And he has already grown so big. So cute. Come and let great-grandpa take a look. Village Chief Old Bu liked children a lot, and Xiao Shuai was the kind of guy that was so cute that Old Bu didn't consider that if Muyu really had a son, why would he appear here? Hey, what great-grandpa? Don't take advantage of me. I'm a Xiao Shuai who saved you. Xiao Shuai shouted. Then you are a monster that can transform into a human form? Village Chief Old Bu thought of the monsters in his story and asked cautiously. Xiao Shuai gritted his teeth. I am a divine beast. I don't believe it. Village Chief Old Bu said. Muyu laughed. Grandpa, he is my little brother. He is very special. This is his other form. You can get used to it. Village Chief Old Bu saw that Muyu had said so, and Xiao Shuai was indeed cute. So he walked over and said with a smile, So you are Muyu's little brother, then let Grandpa hug you. You're not my grandpa. Xiao Shuai mumbled as he chewed on an immortal maple fruit, but he didn't reject Village Chief Old Bu. He was hugged by Village Chief Old Bu. Muyu had to consider a problem now. The palace envoy of the Sanchong Palace was still outside. So how could they leave Luochen Mountain? Xiao Shuai, do you have a way to leave here? Muyu had already familiarized himself with the array formations of Luochen Mountain. The array formations set up by Luochen Mountain were far beyond his imagination. His master's array formations were much more formidable than Muyu's. It was a pity that there was no array formation similar to a transmission array that could take them away from this place. No, if only we had set up a commander transfer formation before we came. Xiao Shuai said. Up until now, they had only set up a commander transfer formation, and it was near Chunan City. The distance was too far. This small formation wasn't the ancient teleportation formation of the Alchemy Cauldron sect, so it couldn't teleport Muyu and company. Our teleportation formation only has a teleportation distance of about 1,000 miles. 1,000 miles isn't too far. To the guy outside, he can catch up in a few breaths. We have to think of another way, Muyu said. The palace envoy had sent Shihongi back to find Bai Jie. If Bai Jie came here personally, things might be troublesome. This was because even if Bai Jie's formation skills weren't as good as Jianing and Chun Feng's, he was still very powerful. He definitely knew how to deal with the protective formation of Luochen Mountain. Muyu thought hard, but to no avail. He could only sit on Luochen Cliff and watch Village Chief Old Bu play with the formation. The palace envoy didn't leave Luochen Mountain at all. He didn't dare to get close to Luochen Mountain. At this time, there was a formation above Luochen Mountain. It isolated the palace envoy outside, so he couldn't see what was going on inside Luochen Mountain. Muyu walked away from Luochen Cliff and went to his master's herb garden. The herb garden was already full of weeds. In the corner, he saw the gray sky heart return grass. The sky heart return grass was still growing vigorously. Muyu looked at the sky heart return grass in a daze. When a person wasn't lost, touching the sky heart return grass would be golden. When a person lost themselves, touching the sky heart return grass would be blue. Back then, Brother Qingyan wanted him to go home. Now that he was back, he didn't know if he was still the same person. Muyu didn't touch the sky heart return grass. What's wrong, Muyu? Village Chief Old Bu came over and asked curiously. No. Muyu shook his head in response. Xiao Shuai had already jumped over. He rolled his eyes and said with a smile, Old man, I'll show you a magic trick." He reached out his small hand and touched the sky heart return grass. The gray sky heart return grass suddenly released a golden brilliance. It looked like a bright sun and was very eye-catching. "Amazing. Is this also an immortal technique?" Village Chief Old Boo asked in amazement. Xiao Shuai said in all seriousness, "This grass can only turn golden when touched by a handsome person. If touched by someone who isn't handsome enough, it can only turn blue. Old man, you could come over and try." Village Chief Old Boo touched the knife-like wrinkles on his forehead and shook his head. "Forget it. Then I probably won't be able to change color." Xiao Shuai laughed loudly. "Have some confidence in yourself. As long as you tell yourself loudly that you're handsome, you'll definitely turn golden." Village Chief Old Boo walked over skeptically and carefully reached out his hand. Then he muttered, "Yes, I was handsome when I was young, but how can I be handsome now?" Although he said that, when his finger touched the sky heart return grass, the grass suddenly turned golden as well. It was like golden sunlight had bloomed. He immediately smiled. "So I'm still so handsome even when I'm old, haha." The old hoodwinker was fooled by the little hoodwinker, and he was still feeling smug. "Muyu, when you touched it, it must have been golden, right? I've always felt that Muyu is very handsome and should be able to win the hearts of girls." Village head Old Boo then touched the other few stalks of Heavenly Heart Resurrection Grass. Every stalk of Heavenly Heart Resurrection Grass was turned into a dazzling golden color, and after a short while, the grass would return to its ordinary gray color. Muyu shook his head. "When I touched it, it was blue. How is that possible? You're not handsome?" Village Chief Old Boo asked in surprise. Muyu explained helplessly, "Don't be fooled by little handsome. This kind of grass has nothing to do with whether or not I'm handsome. It has something to do with whether or not I'm handsome. Whether or not I'm handsome." Village Chief Old Boo vaguely understood something. He remembered the terrible things Muyu had told him about the massacre of cultivators. The Muyu who could do such a thing seemed to have become a different person. "I've always believed that you're a good boy." Village Chief Old Boo plucked a leaf of the sky heart return grass. The leaf turned golden. He shook it in his hand and walked to Muyu's side. He picked up Muyu's hand and put the golden leaf in his hand. Then he asked Muyu to hold the leaf. "Since you can tell me the truth, it means that you're still the same Muyu. Old faker, come and take a look. There's another kind of grass here that can also change." Little Handsome ran to the other side of the herb garden and shouted, "If a smart person touches this grass, they'll make it bloom." Village Chief Old Boo smiled and patted Muyu's shoulder. Then he ran to Little Handsome and shouted, "Little guy, watch me. I'll make it bloom all over the garden." Muyu held the leaf in his hand. Thousands of thoughts flashed through his mind. Did he find himself or not? After a moment of silence, Muyu slowly opened his palm. Looking at the color of the sky heart return grass in his palm, he was slightly stunned. It was like holding a brilliant sun. The color of the sky heart return grass was the same as the first time he touched it. The night wind blew gently. The people of the Sanchong Palace outside Luochen Mountain were eyeing them covetously. However, the three people inside Luochen Mountain were sitting leisurely on Luochen Cliff, roasting a pheasant. In the past, because Enshu's cooking was terrible, everyone went to catch pheasants to eat. In the forest of Luochen Mountain, the pheasants were almost extinct. However, ever since everyone left Luochen Mountain, the ecological balance of the pheasants recovered a lot. Speaking of which, Muyu, have you thought about how we're going to leave? Little Handsome ate until his mouth was full of oil. Muyu also gnawed on a chicken wing and shook his head. "I don't know. In any case, Luochen Mountain's formation is very powerful. With the support of the spirit Shi-I, there's no need to worry about it failing. Eat your fill first. Only when you're full will you have the strength to escape." Village Chief Old Boo didn't care. To him, if the people outside came to catch him, he wouldn't be able to escape. He would just let nature take its course. Besides, he wasn't afraid of anything when he was with Muyu. The three of them were very leisurely. Even though they were trapped here, they were still smiling calmly. To Muyu, Luochen Mountain was his home. It was as if he had returned home. Luochen Mountain would shelter him from the wind and rain outside. Although his other family members were still drifting outside, Muyu had already found himself. He wouldn't be lost again. It was already late at night. Village Chief Oldbu was lying on a large wooden bed on Luochen Cliff and had already fallen asleep. Little Handsome was resting his head on Village Chief Oldbu's arm. His little hands were hugging Village Chief Oldbu, and his little feet were resting on Village Chief Oldbu's stomach. Saliva was still dripping from his mouth. The old and young pair were snoring one after another. Muyu found a blanket and used his spirit power to disperse the moldy smell. He baked it and covered them. Chapter 9:71. The soft chirping of the birds disturbed his morning sleep. Village Chief Oldbu got up sleepily and carefully placed little Shuai, who was lying in his arms, then covered little Shuai with a blanket. Muyu wasn't at Luochen Cliff. He was thinking of going to the vegetable garden to see if he could find some wild vegetables to cook. However, when he looked up, he saw smoke rising in spirals from the kitchen. He curiously left Luochen Cliff and saw the kitchen. He found Muyu making a fire in the kitchen. "Grandpa, you're awake?" Muyu calmly added firewood to the stove. It was just like when his master was cooking on top, and he was making a fire below. "Muyu, you're an immortal master. How can you cook? Let me do it." Village Chief Oldbu said with a smile. "No need, I'll do it. My master said that life is cultivation, so cooking is also a kind of cultivation." Muyu said, when he first came to Luochen Mountain, Feng Haochen was like an ordinary old farmer. He personally grew vegetables and cooked without any of the high and mighty attitude of a cultivator. At that time, Muyu didn't really understand his master's way of doing things. However, he finally understood his master's mentality now. Comprehending the true meaning of life through ordinary things was a kind of cultivation. He didn't need to use spiritual energy to do things. He started from the most basic things and did everything personally. When his mind was calm, his whole person would enter a kind of easygoing tranquility. The spiritual energy in his body would also flow more smoothly. The Luochen cultivation method paid attention to the calmness of the heart. Doing the small things in life was the best way to calm one's heart. From there, one would be able to deeply comprehend the profoundness of the Luochen cultivation method. After stepping into the cultivation world, he was faced with all kinds of deception, schemes, and internal strife. It was as if the entire world was filled with an inexplicable impetuousness. However, after returning to Luochen Mountain, Muyu discovered that this place was a pure land. It was as if everything had returned to its original state, allowing him to find his original self. "My family's Muyu also knows how to cook." "I didn't know. I thought the immortal master was going to fight." Village Chief Oldbu opened the lid of the pot and stirred the congee with a spoon. Then he asked, "Where did the rice come from?" "Grandpa Village Chief, have you forgotten my ability?" Muyu laughed. "With the ability to control wood, one would never have to worry about food." "All right, I almost forgot." Village Chief Oldbu suddenly realized and said, "Then I'll go and cook 2 dishes. I remember that there are carrots in the garden, but I've never seen such big carrots." Village Chief Oldbu and Muyu busied themselves for an hour. They made a pot of porridge, stir-fried 2 side dishes, and some chicken meat, which Muyu had forcefully kept from Lil Shuai last night. The 3 of them ate breakfast and joked around, completely forgetting that the palace envoy of the 3rd palace was still sitting cross-legged in the void outside. But at noon, Shi Hongyi, who had gone to look for reinforcements, returned, breaking this rare, quiet time. Muyu stared at the sky and became alert again. If Bai Jie also appeared here, then things would be very troublesome. But what made him feel strange was that Shi Hongyi only came back alone and did not bring anyone else. Bai Jie was also not present. Shi Hongyi seemed to have whispered something into the palace envoy's ear. Then, the palace envoy's expression changed slightly. He looked at Muyu with unwillingness. Without saying a word, he and Shi Hongyi broke through the void and disappeared from Luochen Mountain. They left? They're not going to catch us?" Little Shuai asked curiously. Muyu was also very surprised. Whether it was him or the village chief, they were both very important people to the people of the third palace. The palace envoy and Shi Hongyi actually left without saying a word. This was too unreasonable. I think they might be playing hard to get. They might be trying to lure us out to check the situation before attacking. Village chief Olbu guessed. That's possible. Muyu nodded, but he felt that the most likely possibility was that something had happened in the cultivation world, so the palace envoy had no choice but to deal with it first. This was something new. Was there anything that the third palace could not solve? He recalled the delay of the mystic immortal battle. Could it be that this matter was far from being as simple as it seemed? Forget it. Anyway, they're gone. We'll just stay here for a while. This place is safe and comfortable. Isn't it great? Little Shuai said casually. Muyu also thought so. Now that he had stepped into the transcending tribulation stage with his own ability, he truly possessed the strength of a transcending tribulation stage expert. Since he had sealed the power of slaughter, he no longer needed to rely on it. The following days were very leisurely. Muyu had already entered a state of cultivation. After returning to Luochun Mountain, his state of mind had become exceptionally calm. Regardless of whether it was his understanding of the Heavenly Sword 9 guides or the Luochun cultivation technique, they had reached a new level. Village Chief Olbu and Little Shuai both stayed at Luochun Mountain. One was an old hoodwinker, while the other was a young hoodwinker, so they had things to do every day. Little Shuai had to teach Village Chief Olbu how to use the formation inscribed by Muyu and how to use it freely so that he could defend himself, fend off the enemy, and hoodwink others at the same time. Village Chief Olbu yearned to become an immortal very much, so he learned very seriously. Little Shuai also told Village Chief Olbu all kinds of things in the cultivation world in detail. Sometimes, he even needed Muyu to correct him. Little Shuai was also an expert at hoodwinking. Most of the things he said were exaggerated. If Muyu had not warned him to let Village Chief Olbu know the true situation of the cultivation world, Little Shuai would have bragged to the heavens. Village Chief Olbu would at least not refer to the cultivation world as immortal masters anymore. He also knew about the 8 gates and the third palace. His views had also changed. When he talked about the terrifying conspiracy of the third palace and how they were trying to persecute Muyu, he was filled with righteous indignation. He held the jade pendant and was about to fight them to the death. In the end, Little Shuai kindly told him that these formation jade pendants could only scratch an itch for the people of the third palace. Only then did Village Chief Olbu unwillingly give up. Muyu cultivated in Luochun Mountain with a peaceful mind for 2 months. During these 2 months, no one came to disturb him. He was undistracted. His cultivation improved by leaps and bounds, and he had already reached the strength of the third heaven of tribulation transcendence. Now, even if he did not need to rely on the power of slaughter, he was confident that he could fight a person like Shi Hongyi head-on. 2 months later, he suddenly had a strange feeling in his heart. This feeling came very suddenly, and it was transmitted to him by the Bodhi tree. That girl has woken up. Gomong had not spoken to Muyu for a while, and had only been recovering. When Muyu sensed the Bodhi tree, he spoke. Tian Ran has woken up. Muyu's calm heart seemed to have been smashed by a stone. His entire body trembled, and he suddenly stood up. That infatuated girl who burned her life to help him escape to deal with the third palace. Could he finally hear her moving, "Big brother Muyu again? I've already helped you. Next, you need to help me." The Bodhi tree was actually transmitting to Gomong, but Gomong and Muyu were one, so Muyu also knew. "Don't worry, I will do it." Muyu left Luochun Cliff without hesitation. He found Village Chief Olbu and Lil Shuai and rushed to Mount Fulong. On the way, Village Chief Olbu learned of what had happened. "You're saying that Tian Ran used a secret technique to sacrifice herself and save you?" Village Chief Olbu was shocked. He heard Little Shuai talk about what had happened that day. "Then you have to treat her well. There aren't many girls like her. But Muyu also likes another girl, Xiao Shui. She's a womanizer like me. She's the most loyal." Little Shuai sat on Village Chief Olbu's neck and bit into an apple. Village Chief Olbu looked at Muyu sternly. Muyu, why are you still half-hearted? Muyu spread his hands helplessly. He did not know how to explain. This matter was very complicated. However, village chief Olbu laughed again. It's okay, it's okay. Grandpa doesn't care how many girls you like. It's best if you marry all of them. My Muyu is a dragon among men. It's natural for girls to like him. Hurry up and give birth to a few more fat children. I'll take care of them for you. You said that the two of us can live a long life. Then I'll be able to watch your children and grandchildren grow up. In the future, there will be a few little Muyu. Just thinking about it is a wonderful thing. Huh? Muyu blushed with shame. The village chief had considered so many things in such a short time. He was at a loss as to what to do. I've already thought about it. In the future, your first child will have a real name, and I'll come up with a nickname. If it's a girl, she'll be called Nan Nan. If it's a boy, he'll be called Little Boo Boo. How's that? Village chief Old Boo said happily. Muyu opened his mouth and did not know whether to laugh or cry. Little Boo Boo, my God. Forget it. Little Boo Boo will be Little Boo Boo, Grandpa, as long as you're happy. Village chief Old Boo had raised Muyu since he was young. If he really had a child, there was nothing wrong with letting village chief Old Boo name it. Muyu did not mind. However, when Muyu thought of his own deadwood daddy, he sighed in his heart. He did not have the heart to tell village chief Old Boo the truth. When Muyu went to revive deadwood daddy, he would die. Muyu was already prepared to die. Therefore, he had never considered these strange things. Muyu could not wait to bring them to Mount Fulong. Along the way, they did not meet anyone from the Threefold Palace. It seemed like they were really entangled with something. Muyu did not want to fight. He stepped into Shui Yuming's territory. This time, Shui Yuming did not stop him. An array pattern flashed under his feet, and he landed beside the Bodhi tree. Big Brother Muyu. A beautiful figure flashed past, and a girl appeared in his arms. Muyu tightly hugged the girl in his arms. Last time, they had only just met in a hurry. They had almost parted ways, and this made him feel extremely guilty. He swore that he would never let this girl be hurt again. Promise me that you won't do anything stupid for me in the future, okay? Muyu ran his fingers through Tian Rant's soft hair. He lowered his head and kissed Tian Rant's forehead. I'm very happy that Big Brother Muyu is fine. Tian Ran raised her head and looked at Muyu. Her eyes were as pure as water. There was not a single trace of impurity in them. They were still so pure, and they moved one's heart. This pure girl was willing to give up everything for the person she liked. She would not hesitate, even if it meant sacrificing her life. However, how could that young man bear to let her get hurt? I'm sorry, Tian Ran. Chapter 972. Sister Tian Ran, I missed you so much. Xiao Shui happily rode on village chief Old Boo's neck and wanted to jump into Tian Ran's arms. But village chief Old Boo held him back and didn't let Xiao Shui destroy the two people. However, Tian Ran still raised her head and looked at Xiao Shui curiously. Little brother, who are you? I am Xiao Shui. A very handsome Xiao Shui. Xiao Shui shouted, and then turned back to his original appearance. Then, he jumped on village chief's shoulder and turned back into a child. Xiao Shui, you can turn back into a human? So cute. Let sister hug you. Tian Ran happily reached out her hand, and Xiao Shui jumped into Tian Ran's arms. He rubbed his head against the soft place with a face full of happiness. Muyu wanted to strangle Xiao Shui, this shameless girl killer. Old Shu looked at village chief strangely and asked, Muyu, why did you bring a human here? All right, I almost forgot. This is Grandpa Village Chief, who raised me since I was a child. Grandpa, this is Old Tree Chief, and this is Tian Ran. Muyu quickly introduced. Village Chief looked at Old Shu and muttered, Muyu, didn't you just say that this is a Yamon? Why doesn't it look like one? Do I need to do this for you to believe me? Old Shu stretched out a branch. Village Chief Old Boo's face changed and quickly hid behind Muyu. He tightly held a jade pendant in his hand and stuck his head out from behind Muyu. Village Chief is afraid of Old Shu. Ha ha. Fraud. You should have fooled Old Tree Head as well. Xiao Shui laughed. Grandpa, he won't hurt us. Did you forget what I told you? Muyu had already told village chief about the instigator of the war between Yumon and the human race. Village chief Olbu curled his lips. When he used to tell stories in the village, the Yumon devil clan was always fierce and evil. However, he still greeted Old Tree Head. It could be considered a formality. Then, village chief Olbu looked at Tian Ran with satisfaction. A perfect match. Not bad, not bad. Muyu's taste is better than Grandpa's. Tian Ran greeted politely. Hello, Grandpa Village Chief. AI, good, very good. Village Chief Bu laughed loudly, full of joy. The more he looked, the more satisfied he was. Even the heavenly daughter of the Red Dust sect was taken away. My Muyu is really promising. The old village chief chuckled. Tian Ran blushed slightly and didn't say anything. Muyu walked to the old tree and asked, Senior, I want to ask, did anything happen in the cultivation world outside the Moyen mountain range? Muyu knew that even though Old Tree Head had been hiding in this place, Yu Meng had some spies in the outside world collecting information for them to deal with sudden situations. Therefore, Old Tree Head should know something. Yes, I heard that there are some rumors about the Sanchong Palace killing the innocent. Now, the entire cultivation world seems to be in a panic. The faith of the Sanchong Palace seems to have been shaken. It is said that this news came from Chunan City. Old Tree Head nodded. Chunan City? Muyu remembered. Back then, Jiang Shangqiu and Higuan sealed off the entire Chunan City in order to trap him. They wanted to kill everyone, but later on, Muyu saved more than 10,000 people. These people witnessed the sacredness and ugliness of the Sanchong Palace, cruelty and hypocrisy with their own eyes. Jiang Shangqiu and Higuan were killed by Muyu. These survivors would naturally spread the news of what they saw. As for how the news spread and how the cultivation world viewed this matter, even Old Tree Head wasn't very clear. Could it be that the palace envoy left that day to stop the news from spreading? Xiao Shuai asked. Then how is he going to stop it? Find a way to find these survivors and kill them all? Muyu was rather puzzled. Tian Ran suddenly said angrily, No matter what they do, I will go with Brother Muyu to destroy the Sanchong Palace. They are a group of devoid of humanity, just like the Red Dust sect. Muyu had never seen Tian Ran say these words. With Tian Ran's personality, she wouldn't casually say something like destroying someone. He hesitated for a moment, then asked, Tian Ran, is your mother still in the Red Dust sect? Tian Ran gritted her teeth. Yes, back then, Yin Qinyun and the others used my mother to threaten me to practice the Red Dust indifference mantra. It was also at that time that I found out that the Red Dust sect was controlled by the Sanchong Palace. From the sect master to the elders, everyone had become puppets of the Sanchong Palace. Muyu couldn't forgive the Red Dust sect for what they did to Tian Ran and Tian Ran. His eyes were filled with killing intent, but he still touched Tian Ran's face and said, Don't worry, I will save your mother from the Red Dust sect. He didn't just go to the Red Dust sect to save people. He also wanted to destroy the Red Dust sect. Whether they were controlled or not, Muyu wouldn't allow them to exist anymore after they did such inhumane things to Tian Ran and Miao Yuyan. Now that he had truly stepped into the tribulation passing stage, he wanted to get back at them one by one. First, he had to destroy the Gate of Hell, Stargate, and the Red Dust sect. Stargate and the Gate of Hell were the helpers of the Sanchong Palace. The Red Dust sect had done unforgivable things to Tian Ran and Miao Yuyan. Muyu wouldn't let these three sects off easily. The remaining tribulation passing stage elders of the sects would go find them and help them get rid of the Divine Soul Formation. Muyu, what are we going to do next? Village Chief Olbu asked. Let's go to the Formation sect to protect your safety, Muyu said. No, I'm going to subdue demons too, Village Head Old Bu said proudly, while waving his pocket full of countless jade pendants that were engraved with magic formations. Muyu felt a headache coming on. How could he take the village chief everywhere? Those jade pendants might be enough to deal with spirit severing stage cultivators, but they weren't enough to deal with body integration stage cultivators and above. However, he didn't want to interrupt the village chief's enthusiasm, so he said, Grandpa, you should stay in the formation sect and conserve your energy. When we attack the Sanchon Palace in the future, we'll need your help. You're an indispensable part. Village Chief Olbu thought for a moment. It sounded like he was still very important, so he reluctantly agreed. Muyu carefully checked Tian Rant's body and found that Tian Rant's life force seemed to be more vigorous than before. Only then did he feel relieved. Tian Ran only burned her life force, and her life force was exhausted. The Bodhi tree helped her recover her life force. Unfortunately, if Deadwood Daddy's body and soul weren't damaged, he could also use this method to recover. Soon, Muyu said goodbye to the old tree chief. The group left the Moya mountain range and flew towards the formation sect. The news that the Sanchon Palace massacred Chun and City spread in the cultivation world. This news made many cultivators bewildered. At this time, if the faith of the Sanchon Palace collapsed, then the Sanchon Palace's words wouldn't be persuasive. All the cultivators would even join forces to fight against the Sanchon Palace and refuse to become the tool of the Sanchon Palace to kill each other. However, at this time, the 8 gates stood out and began to clarify this matter. The general idea was that Muyu had bewitched the Heavenly Lady of the Red Dust sect and massacred Chun and City. At the same time, he used the illusion array to clear his name and deceive the survivors of Chun and City. Among them, the Star Gate, the Gate of Hell, and the Red Dust sect, as the leaders of the cultivation world, stood out to refute the rumors. 3 of the 8 gates stood out, which was quite persuasive. The survivors were also secretly killed by the people of the Sanchon Palace. Many people who knew the truth chose to remain silent. They didn't dare to speak the truth of that day. However, after this incident, more and more people in the cultivation world questioned the Sanchon Palace. This was because after so long, they had never seen the true faces of the people of the Sanchon Palace. If what the survivor said was true and the people of the Sanchon Palace had an ugly appearance, then no one was willing to let this group of ugly people lead the cultivators. Many cultivators began to call for the people of the Sanchon Palace to stand out and prove their identity. After all, for so many years, the people of the Sanchon Palace had only heard of them, but not seen them. In addition to the incident in Chun and City, it was necessary for them to reveal their identity. Naturally, the Sanchon Palace couldn't reveal their identity. They cultivated soul power, which meant that they didn't dare to reveal themselves in places with a lot of people. Otherwise, their soul power would be dispelled by vitality, and they wouldn't be able to disguise themselves. Muyu and the others had already returned to the Array faction. Array Hall. Now, Yaman has begun to attack the cities of the human race. There are constantly news of cities being breached. Zhuge Shaosheng said seriously. Are the Sanchon Palace not planning to hide themselves anymore? Since they have such powerful abilities, why don't they just let the Yuming Devil Clan destroy the entire cultivation world? With their methods, it's more than enough for them to kill cultivators. Why do they have to hide it? Little Shuai said in disgust. Muyu explained, the reason they started the war is because the number of deaths in the cultivation world is few. However, they can't let everyone die. Otherwise, if everyone dies, where will they get soul power to supply them in the future? The Sanchon Palace only wants a portion of the people to die. They definitely want to preserve the lives of the majority. To the current Sanchon Palace, cultivators were like livestock in captivity. When they ran out of soul power, they would start a war and kill some to replenish it. However, if these livestock were all killed, where would they go to find livestock when their soul power ran out again in the future? Therefore, they had the ability to destroy the entire cultivation world, but they didn't dare to do so completely. Not only that, they also had to pretend to be sanctimonious to gain the trust of the cultivators. Otherwise, if the cultivators rebelled, the Sanchon Palace's captivity plan would fail. Little hoodwinker, why can't you even think about this? There's one more thing you have to consider. There are many hidden powerhouses in the cultivation world who can deal with the Sanchon Palace. Not to mention, the immortals can also deal with them. They aren't invincible in the cultivation world yet, so they don't dare to openly reveal their true identities. Otherwise, they'll lose the support of the cultivators, and it'll be difficult for them to do anything. Who would work for them then? Village chief Old Boo interrupted. Chapter 973. Village chief Old Boo stroked his beard and said seriously, "If I'm from a Sanchong, of course. At a time like this, my reputation has been damaged, so I have to stabilize the morale of the army first. After all, the 8 gates in Yumon are under their control, so they can put on a show. I will first send the Yumming demons to attack some cities. When the cultivators are in despair, the people of the 8 gates will enter the battlefield. At this time, the Yumming demons will pretend to be defeated and defeated by the 8 gates. This will boost the morale of the cultivators and make the cultivators place their hopes on the 8 gates for the time being." Puzzled, Little Shuai asked, "Why should we put our hopes on the 8 gates? Shouldn't we put our hopes on the Sanchong?" "Little trickster, if you ask me, why aren't your trickster skills up to par? The Sanchong doesn't dare to show their faces in public, so they naturally can't lead in person. The 8 gates have a transcendent status in the cultivation world, and the cultivators trust them. If they defeat Yumon at this time, the cultivation world will naturally hold them in high esteem. The 8 gates are the representatives of the Sanchong. So what's the difference between believing in the 8 gates and believing in the Sanchong? If there are still some people who don't believe in the Sanchong, they will at least believe in the 8 gates, right?" In the past 2 months, Village Chief Old Boo had learned a lot of common knowledge about the cultivation world in order to become a qualified cultivator. Muyu had told him the basic situation, but he didn't expect Village Chief Old Boo to be able to come up with such insights after just learning about the situation in the cultivation world. Muyu asked calmly, "Then what will the Sanchong do next?" Village Chief Old Boo pondered for a moment and continued speaking loudly. "Because Yumon and the 8 gates listen to the orders of the Sanchong, the Sanchong can make Yumon retreat step by step and pretend to be defeated by the 8 gates. Then the 8 gates will lead everyone to victory and let the cultivators see hope. They'll let everyone know that Yumon isn't invincible. Then, they'll take advantage of the victory and destroy Yumon's nest to consolidate the 8 gates' leadership position. This way, the cultivation world will begin to believe in the strength of the 8 gates and be willing to listen to their orders." Village Chief Old Cloth paused for a moment before continuing. "When facing Yumon, there are only 2 choices. One is to sit and wait for death, and the other is to fight bravely. When the Yumming Devil Clan was too powerful, the self-cultivators would be selfish and try to protect themselves by sending people to their deaths to protect themselves. However, once they realized that the 8 gates could lead them to defeat Yumon, they would not sit still and wait for their deaths. Instead, they would fight alongside the 8 gates. When the Yumon becomes more and more vulnerable, the self-cultivators will realize that the Yumon is nothing more than this. Thus, more and more self-cultivators will join the war to kill the Yumon. At that time, the Threefold Palace's goal will be achieved. The war has already begun, and the soul power will naturally come rolling in." Village Chief Old Cloth analyzed the situation eloquently and methodically from beginning to end. Then, he rolled his eyes and said, "I mentioned these conspiracy theories in the 38th chapter of the 2nd volume of the Legend of Muyu Chi Xia. It's a battle theory of throwing a brick to attract jade and building a plank road in the open while secretly crossing the Chunsong Road in the dark. The Threefold Palace wants the self-cultivators to believe in the 8 gates, which is a strategy of besieging Wei to save Zhao. It's to prevent the Threefold Palace's prestige from being damaged even more. Back then, little Mu Yu dealt with the state of Zhao and the state of Wei in this way." Mu Yu's face was burning red. He really hoped that the village chief didn't say the last sentence because Zhuge Xiaosheng was here. Xiao Shuai said, "But I feel that with the self-cultivators' cowardly nature, they won't risk their lives like that." Village Chief Old Cloth shook his head. "You're wrong. The world is bustling with activity because of profit. The world is bustling with activity because of profit. You told me that self-cultivators are actually no different from mortals. They have the nature of mortals. There are a lot of cultivation resources in the 8 gates. As long as you take out some precious magic weapons, elixirs, and secret manuals as a reward. Many self-cultivators will see the benefits and kill the enemy bravely for these things. Most self-cultivators won't do things that are strenuous and unrewarding for the sake of world peace, but they will definitely take risks for these magic weapons and secret manuals. Since self-cultivators are not selfless immortals, they will do anything for the sake of profit. Muyu really admired the village chief more and more because in this chaotic era, it was very necessary to have someone who could see through the enemy's plan to deal with a colossus like the Threefold Palace. Village Chief Old Cloth saw a pot of tea on the chair next to him and took it over. He directly drank a mouthful of tea to moisten his throat and continued. According to the current situation and my analysis, apart from the 8 gates, there are 2 big sects that are not controlled by the Threefold Palace. They're the Danding School and the Array School. These 2 are very important in the world of self-cultivators. They want to control these 2 sects, but they are all disrupted by my incomparably powerful Muyu. If I were the military counselor of the Threefold Palace, I wouldn't be able to do it myself. I would mobilize all the self-cultivators in the world to besiege you and push you to the heart of the struggle. You will become the target of everyone's crusade. If you can't control it, I will let it be destroyed. Everyone is busy dealing with Yaman, but your 2 sects just stand by and watch. It's really unreasonable. Even without the Threefold Palace doing anything, the self-cultivators' crusade will be enough to make you unable to move an inch. Village Chief Old Cloth suddenly covered his mouth because he remembered that this Zhuge Xiaosheng in front of him was the head of the Array School. He quickly smiled apologetically and said, I'm sorry. I'm not saying that the Array School is bad. I'm saying that if I were the Threefold Palace, please don't blame me. Zhuge Xiaosheng cupped his hands and returned the salute. You're too polite, old mister. I admire your incredible foresight. I won't hide it from you, old mister. What you said just now really happened. For example, Stargate has already led their people to defeat Yaman at Kuaniangang. Right now, the self-cultivators' morale has soared. I just received this news and didn't have time to tell you. I didn't expect you to be right. Luck. I made it up. Village Chief Old Cloth quickly waved his hands. Zhuge Xiaosheng smiled and said, Old mister, you don't have to be modest. 2 months ago, the Array School and the Pill Cauldron School closed their schools at the same time and didn't participate in the affairs of the self-cultivators' world. Right now, many self-cultivators are already complaining. You have the general situation of the world in your heart, so you must be a senior expert. May I ask for old mister's Taoist name? Taoist name? No. I'm just an old man from the countryside who likes to tell stories to children. 2 months ago, I knew nothing about the self-cultivators' world. Village Chief Old Cloth said with a smile. That's right, I can prove it. These 2 months, I've been forcefully instilling him with the knowledge of the self-cultivators' world. Little Shuai climbed on a village chief Old Cloth's shoulder and said casually, Old man from the countryside? Zhuge Xiaosheng was shocked. He took a closer look and realized that village chief Old Cloth didn't have any cultivation on him. He couldn't even cultivate and was just a mortal. But how could an old man from the countryside have the ability to give advice? Just now, village chief Old Cloth had analyzed the Sanchong Palace's next steps in detail, and a few of them had even come true. Muyu, the old mister you brought is really from the countryside. Zhuge Xiaosheng couldn't help but ask. Muyu looked at village chief with admiration and nodded. That's right. He's the grandfather for the countryside who raised me since I was a child. 2 months ago, he still didn't know anything about the self-cultivators' world. Village chief Old Cloth chuckled and looked a little embarrassed. After 2 months of understanding the entire self-cultivators' world, he was able to analyze the situation to this extent. He's really an expert in the mortal world. Zhuge Xiaosheng couldn't help but exclaim in admiration. Village Chief Old Cloth usually liked to tell stories and told all kinds of things about Muyu to the children in the village. Muyu didn't realize that his grandfather, who liked to fool people, had such a good eye for strategy. His talent was really buried in that small mountain village. Come to think of it, how could a storyteller not see the big picture? Grandpa, You can say whatever you want. It's okay. Sect leader Zhuge is one of us. He won't mind what you say, Mu Yu said. That's right. Mu Yu is the sect leader. They all have to listen to Mu Yu, so there's nothing to worry about, little Shuai said. All right, I forgot about Mu Yu's ability. Village Chief Oldcloth proudly puffed out his chest and didn't seem to be so reserved. Zhuge Shaoxing asked, then what do you think we should do to deal with the Sanchong Palace next? The Sanchong Palace just wants to start a war, so we can make it impossible for them to start a war, Village Chief Oldcloth said. How can we stop all of this? Mu Yu, didn't you say you were going to destroy the 3 sects? If you can destroy them and cut off one of their arms, that would be the best, Village Chief Oldcloth said. Mu Yu pondered for a moment. He was now a tribulation passing stage self-cultivator, and he had Tian Ran and Zhuge Shaoxing with him. It was more than enough for them to destroy Stargate together. Little Shuai said, but there are still 5 sects after we destroy them. Are we going to destroy them too? The point isn't to destroy the sects, but to break the self-cultivators' confidence. The self-cultivators believe in the 8 gates. Under the control of the Sanchong Palace, the 8 gates are invincible. Yumon is losing ground again and again, so the self-cultivators will be more involved in the battle. The more people die, the happier the Sanchong Palace will be. But if 3 sects are destroyed, the self-cultivators will be intimidated and their hearts will start to beat faster. Village Chief Oldcloth took little Shuai from his shoulder into his arms and pinched his cheeks. Little hoodwinker, learn from me and you'll definitely have a bright future. Little Shuai curled his lips. I'll become an old hoodwinker in the future. And then, Zhuge Shaoxing asked, with the self-cultivator's temperament, when they realize that 3 of the 8 gates have been destroyed and that the benefits they promised can no longer be realized, they'll start to shrink back and lose their desire to fight again. So next, the Supreme Immortal Leaderboard must be brought up. Village Chief Old Bu had a confident look on his face. Supreme Immortal Leaderboard? Mu Yu nodded slightly. That's right. Mu Yu, you said last time that the Sanchong Palace was deliberately delaying the battle between the Xian Immortals. Although I don't know why. The more they don't want to face something, the more we have to force them to face it. In the eyes of the self-cultivators, the Supreme Immortal Leaderboard exists to fight against Yumon. So when they see 3 of the 8 gates fall and their morale plummet, they will naturally think of the first 9 Xian Immortals. They will turn their hopes to the first 9 Xian Immortals. Chapter 974. Mu Yu thought about what Helian Kong said about Xian Immortals. Once the first 9 Xian Immortals were confirmed, they could activate the 9 profound Heaven Dipper formation and control the power of the heavens. The Threefold Palace seemed to be planning some conspiracy using the power of the heavens, but it didn't look like they were ready yet. Helian Kong speculated that this was the reason why they postponed the battle of the Xian Immortals. Mu Yu told me last time that the final battle of the Xian Immortals is decided by the Threefold Palace, so they can change it as they wish. However, if the cultivation world is in a state of panic again, we just have to find a way to spread the news that the battle of the Xian Immortals is imminent. We have to confirm it as soon as possible and summon all the extreme immortals in the cultivation world to participate in the battle. We will definitely get everyone's support. When the time comes, we will find a way to gather all the extreme immortals in the cultivation world to the extreme immortal steel and activate it. I think the Threefold Palace won't be able to stop us. Village Chief Oldbu said confidently. That's right. As long as 2/3 of the extreme immortals are present, the extreme immortal steel can be activated. When the time comes, the extreme immortals in the Threefold Palace will have to be there even if they don't want to because they want to control the first 9 Xian Immortals. Mu Yu nodded. That's right. The more the enemy doesn't want to face something, the more we have to create conditions for them to face it. This will make them panic. When the time comes, Mu Yu, it will be time for you to make a move. I think it's not just you. Didn't you say there are 3 other senior brothers? If the 4 of you can occupy the first 9 spots of the extreme immortal steel, it will be equivalent to adding more trouble to the Threefold Palace. The more trouble the enemy has, the more chances we have. This is just like the story I told about Muyu taking over the White Tiger Pass. Muyu, you played the guards like a fool. Village Chief Olbu looked at Muyu excitedly. Muyu blushed again. He still didn't know what the plot of taking over the White Tiger Pass was. It was all made up by this old man. As for the book, The Legend of Muyu, that Village Chief Olbu wrote for him, Muyu was too embarrassed to flip through it. He thought that he should find some time to read this book. Although most of the content was fictional and made him feel ashamed, every time the village chief gave an example, he would feel puzzled. Needless to say, the legend of Muyu's heroic hero was created to elevate the little Muyu that village head Olbu was so proud of, so that he could fool the other kids in the village. However, village chief Olbu was able to tell all kinds of stories, which was a kind of talent. Only by having the overall situation in mind could he tell a good story. Muyu had grown up listening to the stories of the village head, and he had learned many of the village head's ways of thinking. He knew under what conditions and how to fight to create favorable conditions for himself, especially when he was using the art of formation. As long as he grasped the right timing, even a Zhongtian art of formation could be more powerful than an Xiantian art of formation. Muyu was rarely at a disadvantage when fighting with people of the same level. This was because he was skilled in battle and had perfect control of the art of formation. It could be said that it was inseparable from village chief Old Bu's influence. Zhuge Xiaosheng nodded in praise. Old mister, you really think that you are a real talent. It is my fault for not recognizing you. Village chief Old Bu chuckled and said, No, I always tell stories, so I have to have some experience. Otherwise, how can I fool? No, otherwise, how can I make the children believe me? Don't you think so, Muyu? That's right. You're the best. Muyu nodded in agreement. When he was young, he only listened to half of the stories that the village chief told him. This was because the village chief liked to fool people, so he had to learn how to distinguish between the truth and the lies from the stories. However, when he listened to the village chief's stories of war, he also knew that the village chief had great foresight and was indeed a talented general. Actually, Muyu, you should read the autobiography that I wrote for you. I used 108 ways to mold you into a great talent who is both intelligent and brave. There are also many ways to arrange troops in the book. You are my pride. Village chief Olbu patted Muyu's shoulder happily. Now that Muyu was taller than him, he could no longer touch Muyu's head. 108 ways? Muyu felt more and more guilty. Zhuge Xiaosheng looked at Muyu in surprise. Muyu, you have an autobiography? Yes. It is called The Legend of Muyu. It is currently out of print in the cultivation world, and there is only one copy. Do you want to read it? I gave this book to Muyu a few days ago. You can borrow it from him and read about my Muyu's growth, village chief Olbu said proudly. Without waiting for Zhuge Xiaosheng to ask, Muyu said in a panic, No, Grandpa, this is my secret. If other people know what I did, won't I be exposed in the future? What if other people discover my weakness? What kind of joke was this? Those were all fabricated stories. Muyu himself hadn't read it. If there were some shameful stories written in it, such as the embarrassing incident where he peed and drew circles when he was 3 years old, his reputation as the leader of the Formation Talisman sect would be ruined. Village chief Olbu twirled his beard. You are right, but didn't you say that this sect leader can be trusted? Muyu, don't you trust me? Zhuge Xiaosheng asked with a faint smile. He had already vaguely guessed what Muyu was worried about. Naturally, it wasn't a so-called weakness, but something that was difficult to talk about. Muyu didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Sect leader, don't make fun of me. 90% of this book is fabricated. The only real thing should be the 2 words Muyu. Zhuge Xiaosheng laughed heartily. I understand, but with old Mister's talent, Duzua's story has its merits. This really makes me curious. It's okay. If you want to read it, I can tell you. I already read it a few days ago. I have a photographic memory. The first volume is like this. The immortal master kneels down to the old village chief. There's a paragraph in it. Fast as you can say, our Muyu rushed over in time and fought with the immortal master for 300 rounds. It was called The Sky Darkening and the Earth Darkening, the sun and the moon losing their light. Mu Yu's two flying swords were like world-shaking heavenly thunder, specialized in judging the good and evil in the world. When a heavenly sword came out, sand flew and stones rolled, lightning flashed and thunder roared, making people almost unable to open their eyes. With the stab of the sword, the wind rose and the clouds surged, the sky fell and the earth cracked. Little Shuai began to talk nonstop. Mu Yu's face turned green. He quickly took out a drumstick and stuffed Little Shuai's mouth. "Sect leader, wait for me to read it once, then I will show it to you." Mu Yu calmed down and said he had to take a look at it personally to make sure that there was nothing shameful about this book. "Then it's a deal." Zhuge Xiaosheng was very curious about the book written by village chief Old Bu. For a village mortal farmer to be able to analyze the situation of the cultivation world so thoroughly, his book must have its merits. However, according to village chief Old Bu's analysis, it was very clear what to do next. Mu Yu and company had already stayed in the Array faction for 10 days. In these 10 days, just as village chief Old Bu said, the cultivation world began to be filled with war and disputes. While the Yuman was fighting against the cities, the people of the 8 gates began to fight back. Just as village chief Old Bu said, the Yuman began to be defeated continuously. The morale of the cultivation world was greatly boosted. The cultivators had already regained their confidence in the 8 gates. The 8 gates also released extremely tempting conditions, including how many Yuman they killed and how many outstanding military exploits they could make their sect or family a subsidiary of the 8 gates. In the future, they would be protected by the 8 gates forever. Their descendants would also have the opportunity to enter the 8 gates and become their disciples. One must know that the 8 gates were the leaders of the cultivation world. If the descendants of some small families could enter any of the 8 gates to study, they would definitely become outstanding and bring glory to their ancestors. And if the small sects were able to climb up the ranks of the 8 gates, it would be very beneficial for the development of the sections. Not to mention, the 8 gates also took out extremely precious techniques and top-grade magic treasures as rewards. In order to obtain these treasures and Yuman's repeated defeats, the cultivators' morale was very high and they were full of fighting spirit. The entire cultivation world seemed to have been reunited under the leadership of the 8 gates. At the same time, the cultivation world was quite dissatisfied with the Pill Cauldron sect and Array factions in action. However, the Pill Cauldron sect used the reason of being heavily injured by Yuman as an excuse to close their sect. The Array faction used the reason of Zhuge Xiaosheng being heavily injured by Yuman as an excuse to refuse to participate in the battle. The Pill Cauldron sect and Array faction both said that unless the 3 palaces were led by 9 mystic immortals, they would not participate in the battle. This immediately raised the importance of 9 mystic immortals. Letting 9 mystic immortals lead the human race against Yuman had always been the norm, so the Pill Cauldron sect and Array faction's choice was understandable. Even if everyone wanted to say something, they couldn't find an excuse to refute. At this time, Mu Yu had already decided to carry out his plan to exterminate the sect. "Big brother Mu Yu, do we really have to exterminate the Red Dust sect?" Tian Ran asked hesitantly. Mu Yu knew what Tian Ran was thinking. After all, she had grown up in the Red Dust sect. Even if the Red Dust sect had framed her and her mother, in her eyes, many of her sisters were innocent. They shouldn't have attracted such a disaster. Mu Yu pondered for a moment. "Do you want more people like you to appear in the Red Dust sect in the future? For the sake of a so-called sect master, you want to become heartless and become a tool of the 3 palaces, helping the evildoers?" Tian Ran shook her head. "I hate the Red Dust sect's tribulation stage elders. In order to pursue a higher cultivation level, they all cultivated the Red Dust emotionless technique. In the past 2 years, they've even forbidden the female disciples of the sect from dating. But originally, many of my senior sisters had someone they liked. They were just forced to do so." Mu Yu sighed. "Then what do you think we should do? Don't forget, your mother is still in the Red Dust sect." Tian Ran thought for a moment, then said, "How about this? We only need to subdue the tribulation stage elders. I'm still a heavenly maiden in name, so I can lead the Red Dust sect and abolish the old rules and customs of the Red Dust sect. My senior sisters can truly be together with the man they like. Is that okay? Tian Ran looked earnestly at Mu Yu. Mu Yu's heart softened. He nodded. Okay, then let's go to the Red Dust sect and take care of all the tribulation stage elders. Chapter 975. Thank you. Tian Ran smiled happily. Silly girl. Mu Yu held Tian Ran's hand tightly. How many tribulation passing elders does the Red Dust sect have? Little Shuai asked. Including Yin Qingyun, there are 7 in total. Tian Ran said. The Red Dust sect naturally had more tribulation passing elders than the Pill Cauldron sect because it was more difficult for alchemists to reach the tribulation passing stage. Then there are only 6 left. The 2 of us aren't enough to deal with 6 people. We need to find a few more tribulation passing helpers. Mu Yu pondered. Zhuge Xiaosheng said, Mu Yu, I'm willing to help. Mu Yu thought for a moment. Although Zhuge Xiaosheng had just reached the tribulation passing stage, as a formation master, he was extremely powerful. He nodded and said, Okay, but 3 isn't enough. We don't only need to face the elders of the Red Dust sect, we also need to pay attention to the people of the Third Palace. If they went to the Red Dust sect and encountered the people of the Third Palace, it would be very troublesome. Zhuge Xiaosheng could resist them with his cultivation, but Tian Ran had just reached the tribulation passing stage. It would be good if she could fight to a draw with one of them. When the time came, even if Mu Yu could fight 1 against 2, there wouldn't be enough people. Let's call Helian Kong too. Little Shuai suggested. He's an alchemist and a soul. If we really fight, he'll probably be at a disadvantage. We can't let him take the risk. Mu Yu shook his head. Master Lu hurried in from outside the formation hall and said, Mu Yu, I've already found the specific information. Thank you for your hard work. Master Lu, tell me. Mu Yu asked Master Lu to find out how the battle between the 8 gates in Yaman was going, as well as how many crossing calamity stage cultivators there were in the 8 gates, and how their strength was distributed. Master Lu wiped his sweat and said, As far as we know, each of the 8 gates has at least 7 tribulation passing stage cultivators keeping watch. In addition, there are some sects that are slightly weaker than the 8 gates, such as Sword-Washing Valley, Wonderful Wood Sect, and so on, which also have 4 or 5 tribulation passing stage experts. Currently, there are about 50 tribulation passing stage cultivators in the cultivation world. At this time, these 50 or so people are scattered in different cities to resist Yaman. The 8 gates have set an example, and each sect has sent out at least 5 tribulation passing stage self-cultivators. Yaman is no longer their opponent, and now the self-cultivators are following their lead. Village Chief Old Bu poured him a cup of tea and said, Teacher Lu, come sit. Thank you, old Mr. Bu. Master Lu quickly said. He already knew the identity of Village Chief Old Bu, as well as the hidden side of him. No need, we are all on the same side. Village Chief Old Bu waved his hand. He found that ever since he came to the Formation sect, everyone was polite to him. At first, he was quite uncomfortable. After all, he was just a mortal, and these people were all self-cultivators. But because of Mu Yu, and because he casually speculated about the intentions of the Threefold Palace, and guessed all of them correctly, everyone was very respectful to him. By the way, what about the matter I asked you to investigate? There was a map placed in front of Village Chief Old Bu, which had been drawn on using array techniques. It had all the mountains and rivers of the 3 continents. At this moment, Village Chief Old Bu had also made some markings on it, all of which were related to the locations where the Yu Meng devils had appeared. Master Lu said with a face full of admiration, Old Mr. Bu is right. Yaman's several lairs are indeed distributed in these areas. I personally went to investigate and found Priest Jean Yaman's lair, but I didn't dare to get too close, so I can't explain the specific situation. Master Lu had now stepped into the body fusion stage, but facing Priest Jean Yaman was still quite dangerous, so he didn't dare to get too close. Old liar, how did you know where Yuman was distributed? Little Shuai sat on a chair and gnawed on a chicken leg curiously. Village Chief Olbu laughed. I guessed it. You see, Yumon can quickly retreat after being defeated, and no one can catch up with them. They can't be found in the area where they disappeared, but I guess that as long as we follow the distribution of Yumon's locations and then analyze the mountains and rivers, it's easy to deduce their approximate layers. In these few days, Zhuge Shaosheng and the others really had a whole new level of respect for Village Chief Olbu. An old man from the countryside without any cultivation was actually able to explain things methodically. Every move of the threefold palace was predicted by him, as if he had the help of God to see through the entire situation. He was quite extraordinary. Even Mu Yu was a little surprised. He had originally brought the village chief to the formation sect to protect him, but he didn't expect to find a hidden talent who could point out the overall situation. Grandpa, where do you think Priest Mu Yumon is most likely to be? Mu Yu had promised Gomong that he would capture the Blood Lotus and use it as Gomong's body, so he wanted to know where the Blood Lotus was hiding and then think of a way to capture it. Village Chief Olbu drew a map and said, Mu Yumon is not the main force of the battle, but they can be seen almost everywhere. And in this battle, Priest Yumon didn't participate, so it's difficult to determine their specific location. I suspect that the 4 priests Yumon you mentioned should be restricted by the threefold palace. Otherwise, if they were to join the battle, it would be very difficult for the 8 gates to defeat them, even if they had the strength of a tribulation stage cultivator. So there's no way to find Priest Yumon's whereabouts? Mu Yu asked. Village Chief Olba nodded. Currently, it's like this. As long as we destroy Yumon's headquarters, they can't continue to pretend to be defeated. They have to let Priest Yumon come out to lead them. So, if you want to force Priest Yu Meng to come out, you have to go and destroy their nest and make them really hurt their vitality so that they can't continue with their act. But, however, this way, we can't destroy the self-cultivator's confidence and make them focus on the Xian Immortal, right? Mu Yu said, That's right. At this time, even if Priest Yumon comes out to lead them, their subordinates are already badly hurt and can't fight the human race head-on. That's all the more reason for the threefold palace to not use the extreme immortal monument, Village Chief Olbu said. I understand. Then it's better for us to take the initiative and turn things into a situation that the threefold palace doesn't want to see. Mu Yu temporarily put the matter of the Blood Lotus aside, because he would definitely have a chance to face Priest Yumon in the future, so he wasn't in a hurry. Grandpa Village Chief, where are the people of the Red Dust sect now? Tian Ran asked. Village Chief Olbu pointed at the map and said, According to Master Lu's information, the Red Dust sect has sent out 5 people. One of them is a tribulation passing stage elder in Xiuyang City. This city just so happens to be jointly guarded by a Stargate elder. They've already brought self-cultivators to search the sheep in Teston Mountain Range, near Xiuyang City, in order to find Yumon's headquarters. Of course, they won't be able to find it. The remaining tribulation passing stage self-cultivators are scattered in other cities. Doesn't that mean that the Red Dust sect only has one tribulation passing stage elder guarding it? After we go to the Red Dust sect, we should be able to subdue them, right? Tian Ran said in pleasant surprise. Although she didn't know which elder was guarding the Red Dust sect right now, with 3 against 1, especially with Mu Yu's presence, their chances of winning were very high. Village Chief Olbu shook his head. If it were me, I wouldn't go to the Red Dust sect. Why? Tian Ran asked in confusion. Because the Sanchong Palace knows that I'll go to the Red Dust sect for revenge. Mu Yu explained. Village Chief Olbu nodded his head in praise. Mu Yu is right. Back in Chun'an City, you sacrificed yourself to help Mu Yu out. The Sanchong Palace easily heard about this from the survivors. You're Mu Yu's little sweetheart. If something happens to you, won't Mu Yu go crazy? He'll definitely find an opportunity to rush to the Red Dust sect for revenge. Right now, the 3 tribulation passing stage elders of the Red Dust sect aren't in the sect. It looks like this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for revenge. I'm sure that there's a powerful figure in the Red Dust sect waiting for Muyu to deliver himself to their doorstep. Tian Ran's face turned slightly red. She didn't think too much about it, especially when village chief Old Bu called her little sweetheart. Grandpa, I'm not his little sweetheart. He's always been a heartless person. Tian Ran stuck out her tongue. Muyu scratched Tian Ran's nose. Of course you're not my little sweetheart. Then what am I to you? Tian Ran asked curiously. I'm not telling you. Muyu spread his hands. Tian Ran snorted. She put her hands on her hips and said, Grandpa Village Chief, Big Brother Muyu is bullying me again. Village Chief Olbu knocked Muyu's head. Muyu, don't bully Tian Ran. Muyu sighed helplessly. All right. You're my whole world. Ugh. Xiao Shuai's body trembled. I'm getting goosebumps. Muyu raised his hand and flicked Xiao Shuai's head. Anyway, it's most likely that there's a grand ascension stage cultivator in the Red Dust sect waiting for me in the third layer palace, so I don't think I can go to the Red Dust sect for the time being. Muyu said. He pondered for a moment. Muyu was more confident in destroying the Ghost Gate and the Tianqing Gate than the Red Dust Gate, which had an ambush. The Tianqing Gate had 7 divine peaks, which floated in midair through a matrix. As for the Gate of Hell, he had seen Meng Pe and Duke Meng. He had experienced the Twin Corpse Sea, so he had a way to deal with the Gate of Hell. Sectmaster, the Stargate's formation hasn't been maintained in the past few years, right? Muyu asked. Zhuge Xiaosheng was annoyed when he thought of the Stargate. He said, the Stargate doesn't have the face nor the guts to ask us to maintain their formation. Back then, the Talisman sect had joined forces with the Stargate and almost destroyed the Erase sect. Now that the Talisman sect was firmly controlled by the Erase sect, there was no one to maintain the 7 divine peaks of the Stargate. That's simple. Muyu nodded. The 7 divine peaks of the Stargate all needed to be maintained regularly. Otherwise, there would be some flaws. This was an opportunity. Village Chief Olbu said, Muyu, I suggest you go to the Gate of Hell. According to the current distribution of the 8 gates, the Gate of Hell's forces are the most scattered. Almost every major city has people from the Gate of Hell. The 3 tribulation passing experts they sent out aren't gathered in the same city. I think they are collecting souls from everywhere. This means that if something happens to the Gate of Hell's sect, the people outside won't be able to rush back to help at the same time. You guys will have more chances. Muyu thought of the Muyu's Legend of the Hero that he had been watching for the past few days. He smiled and said, Grandpa, I have a better idea. Do you remember? The story of bravely conquering the Twin Demon City. Village Chief Olbu blinked his eyes and came to a sudden realization. You mean, wonderful. Not bad, Muyu. Your brain works faster than mine. That's right. I can't do worse than Muyu in here. Chapter 976. Wuqiu City. Wuqiu City was a large cultivation city with a population of more than 500,000 people. It had a very important position in the cultivation world, so there were many guards here. Now, there were 6 tribulation stage experts guarding the city. The city defense formation enveloped the entire city. All cultivators who entered the city would be strictly interrogated and go through 2 inspection procedures to prevent Yumon from invading. Muyu and Xiao Shuai had already entered Wuqiu City. Xiao Shuai was holding a lamb skewer in his hand and happily munching on it. This time, only the 2 of them came out. Tian Ran didn't come with them because it was unwise for Muyu to bring Tian Ran with him to carry out his plan. Tian Ran and Zhuge Xiaosheng had to wait for him to settle things properly and wait for the right time to make their move. There were many people coming and going on the streets of Wuqiu City. Most of them were excited cultivators. Because Yumon was defeated by the people led by the 8 gates when he attacked Wuqiu City, the morale of the human race was greatly boosted. Walking on the streets, Muyu could hear cultivators talking about how the 3 tribulation stage experts of Stargate defeated Yumon together. Elder Tian Hoyang of Stargate is really awe-inspiring. This person's cultivation is probably at the 5th sky of tribulation stage, right? I heard that it's not just that. Elder Tian Hoyang's cultivation is profound. I heard that he's at the 6th sky of tribulation stage. Taoist Yuguan of Xianling sect is also very powerful. With one palm strike, Yaman was turned into ashes before he could even cry out. Now that the elders of the 8 gates are here, there's no need for the 9 mystic immortals of the supreme immortal leaderboard to come out. Yeah, I believe that as long as we find an opportunity to capture 5 spirit lords Yaman alive, we could take Yaman down again. A group of people were talking about it on the street. They all praised the great strength of the 8 gates at the crossing calamity stage. In this era of panic, the 8 gates could stand up and lead the world of cultivation to fight, which indeed stabilized the morale of the people. Have you heard? Recently, the elder of the Earth Emperor sect offered a class 7 demonic beasts inner core as a reward. As long as you kill 5,000 Yaman, you can exchange for this class 7,000 red silver Jiao's inner core. How many have you killed? I've only killed 50. Last time, I spent 20 soul points to exchange for a medium-grade flying sword. I've only killed 42 of them. I really hope we can find Yaman's lair soon. I want to kill a few more. The few cultivators at the roadside stall seemed to be very eager to kill Yaman. They were no longer as cowardly as before. Muyu listened for a while and realized that everyone was discussing the so-called soul points. They were also comparing the number of Yaman they killed. This made Muyu very curious. How did they determine the number of Yaman they killed? Muyu pondered. I just saw them comparing the things in their palms. I guess there's some kind of mark on their palms. Xiao Shui bought a few sticks of candied haws from God knows where and even ate them together with the mutton skewers. He realized that it was more interesting to eat like this. He didn't know how this strange taste was cultivated. Let's go take a look. Muyu silently followed the 2 middle-aged men in front of him. According to the content of their conversation, the green-clothed cultivator was called Zhanggan, and the yellow-clothed cultivator was called Wenli. Zhanggan's cultivation was at the 2nd firmament of nascent soul stage, while Wenli's cultivation was at the 3rd firmament of nascent soul stage. Junior martial brother Wenli, how many soul points do you have now? Zhanggan asked with a smile. Wenli waved his hand and said proudly, Senior martial brother, I already have 68 soul points. What about you? Haha, Senior martial brother has a bit more than you. I already have 80 soul points. Right? What do you want to exchange for this time? Zhanggan asked. From the tone of these 2 people, they seemed to be fellow disciples of the same sect. Senior martial brother, I want to exchange for the soul shock sword from the gate of hell. However, the soul shock sword requires 100 soul points. I still need to kill a few more Yaman. Senior martial brother, what do you want to exchange for? Wenli shook his head and sighed. Zhanggan smiled. I don't have anything to exchange for now. Don't worry, junior martial brother. The next time a Yaman attacks, I'll help you accumulate 100 soul points. The 2 of us will work together to subdue the Yaman, and you'll be in charge of killing them. Wenli said gratefully, Thank you, senior martial brother. I know that senior martial brother treats me the best. Don't be so courteous with senior martial brother. Master said that we have to take care of each other outside. Let's go. Right, senior martial brother will bring you to meet someone. Zhanggan patted Wenli's shoulder. Okay. Wenli's expression was very relaxed. He had always trusted his senior martial brother. Zhanggan and Wenli turned around and entered an alley. After passing through the alley, they arrived at a poplar forest in the city. This senior martial brother is quite loyal, little Shui said as he chewed on the mutton skewers and Tong Halu. Muyu's eyes flickered with a strange light. He didn't say anything and only maintained a distance from the 2 of them. He silently followed them. With his cultivation, he wouldn't be discovered by the 2 of them. Okay, here it is. Zhanggan looked around and then said, Senior martial brother, you said that you wanted to bring me to meet someone. Who exactly do you want to meet? Wenli asked curiously. Zhanggan said gently, Don't be anxious. He'll be here soon. I was just about to give you a surprise. Surprise? Senior martial brother, could it be that the person you're talking about is? Wenli suddenly became excited. Close your eyes first. Naturally, you can't peek at the surprise. Zhanggan patted Wenli's shoulder. Wenli closed his eyes without any vigilance and said excitedly, Okay. Zhanggan saw that Wenli's eyes had already closed. The smile on his face was still as warm as spring, but his eyes had become cold. The person that Senior Marshal Brother wants you to meet, you will never guess. Swish! A sword beam flashed past, and a cold sword tip pierced through Wen Li's heart. It pierced through Wen Li's back and out of his chest. The tip of the sword was still dripping with blood. The blood that fell onto the grass was a ghastly sight. Wen Li suddenly opened his eyes and turned his head in disbelief. Senior Marshal Brother, what are you doing? The clothes on his chest were already dyed red with blood. The person that Senior Marshal Brother wants you to meet is the King of Hell, Zhang Gan said with a fake smile. Why? Wen Li didn't understand why the Senior Marshal Brother, who usually took care of him, would suddenly kill him. Zhang Gan's eyes revealed a trace of ruthlessness. Junior Marshal Brother, don't blame Senior Marshal Brother for being ruthless, because I also need 100 soul points to exchange for that soul shock sword. Wen Li didn't understand and asked, then why do you want to kill me? You should kill Yaman. Only by killing them can you get soul points. Zhang Gan laughed coldly. Junior Marshal Brother, you are wrong. Killing Yaman isn't the only way to get soul points. Killing people can also get soul points. Not only that, as long as I kill you, I can get all of your soul points. You have 68 soul points now. If I kill you, I will have 100 and can exchange for the soul shock sword. But the Gate of Hell offered 30 soul shock swords as a reward. Why do you have to kill me? Wen Li's voice was trembling. He was almost shouting. Zhang Gan snorted coldly. You probably don't know yet, right? Right now, there are only 2 soul shock swords left in the Extreme Immortal Pavilion. I can't wait any longer. If I'm late, I'm afraid there won't be any left. Therefore, Junior Marshal Brother, I can only wrong you. Don't worry, I will explain everything to Master. I will say that you were greedy for merit and died in Yaman's hands. Zhang Gan suddenly raised the sword in his hand. A strong spiritual energy slashed out, wanting to split Wen Li in half. Crash! Wen Li wasn't split in half. He only shattered into formation patterns that filled the sky and fell into the forest like autumn leaves. Zhang Gan was shocked and cried out, How can this be? Behind a white birch tree, Wen Li walked out with a face full of shock. Beside him stood the silent Mu Yu. Zhang Gan looked at Wen Li, who was stabbed in the heart by him just now, and then his eyes fell on the strange Mu Yu next to him. His pupils shrank, and a look of horror appeared on his face. Who are you? Zhang Gan shouted at Mu Yu in a threatening manner. Mu Yu looked at Zhang Gan indifferently. He waved his hand, and a formation pattern suddenly rolled out. It wrapped around Zhang Gan's neck and pulled Zhang Gan in front of him. He slapped Zhang Gan's dantian and directly crippled him. Zhang Gan's face was ashen. He was only at the nascent soul stage. How could he resist Mu Yu, who was at the crossing tribulation stage? In the blink of an eye, he collapsed on the ground like a dead dog. His face was filled with pain. After dealing with him, I have something to ask you. After Mu Yu finished speaking to Wen Li, he walked to the side and leaned against a tree trunk. He didn't know why, but there was a trace of inexplicable anger in his heart that couldn't be quelled. Perhaps it was Zhang Gan's so-called Senior Marshal Brother identity that made him feel disgusted. He thought of his missing Senior Marshal Brothers and felt a little melancholy. He had returned home. Where was Senior Marshal Brother? Wen Li couldn't bear to look at Zhang Gan, who was crippled by Mu Yu in the blink of an eye. He still didn't give up and asked, Senior Marshal Brother, I always thought that you were a good person. You always took good care of me. I also respected you. I don't understand. Why would you want to kill me? Zhang Gan gritted his teeth. He thought of the past, and his face was filled with hatred. He shouted angrily, You don't understand? You respect me? Bullshit. In Master's eyes, you are the only polite disciple. Don't think that I don't know that you are flattering Master. Before you entered the sect, Master had always thought highly of me. Ever since you entered the sect, Master has treated you like a treasure. He gave you all the good cultivation resources. Zhang Gan became more agitated as he spoke. He seemed to have forgotten the pain in his body and continued to shout angrily. Originally, my cultivation was higher than yours, so I could tolerate it. But now, your cultivation has surpassed mine. I heard that Master was going to give the position of sect leader to you. I will not allow you to ride on my head. As long as you obtain the soul shock sword, Your strength will surpass mine. At that time, all the respect will be bullshit. I will not allow such a thing to happen. So you must die. Wunli muttered, Senior Martial Brother, you know that I am not such a person. I told Master that you are the successor of the sect leader. I don't want to be the sect leader because I feel that you are more suitable than me. Master also agreed. But how can you treat me like this? Chapter 977. Muyu didn't know why he wanted to save Wen Li, someone who had nothing to do with him. Perhaps it was because he saw the fake affection in Zhang Gan's eyes, which made him angry. That was why he chose to save Wen Li. Muyu didn't say anything when little Shuai said, This senior brother is quite sentimental. This was because he knew that the sentimental look in his senior brother's eyes was fake. It wasn't the look of a senior brother who truly cared about his junior brother. On the other hand, when he looked at Zhang Gan with genuine respect, he didn't hide it. Muyu could tell at a glance whether the feelings between the senior brothers were real or fake. This was because he had 3 senior brothers. Qingyan never complained about how he treated them. He always had a tolerant attitude. Even if his junior brothers went their separate ways because of different beliefs, Qingyan would still wait for his junior brothers to return home and protect them in his own way. Luo Shang had always found Muyu to be an eyesore. He would directly express his displeasure, and his words were also quite impolite. He never tried to hide anything. However, whenever Muyu was in trouble, Luo Shang would always help him solve it. After that, he would scold Muyu. Even though Luo Shang's personality had changed when they met in Yisan City, he didn't abandon Muyu. Xiangnan's cultivation had reached a terrifying level right from the start. After he merged with Hutu, he could easily kill his 3 senior brothers in the Death Desert. However, Xiangnan didn't do that. He wanted to persuade Muyu to join him and fight against the cultivators and Yaman together. After Muyu rejected him, he didn't say anything. He even asked the controlled cultivators in Clearwater City to protect Muyu's family. The 4 of them had never thought of killing each other. Even if they had different opinions, they would only choose to leave. They wouldn't do anything to anyone. Muyu cherished this kind of relationship between fellow disciples. They were all part of Falling Dust Mountain, disciples of their master. They could have different opinions, but they would never do something like what Zhang Gan had done, harming their fellow disciples. Therefore, he didn't like people like Zhang Gan. Calm down. Eat a tonghalu? Xiao Shuai saw through Muyu's intentions. Muyu didn't take it. He just reached out and patted little Shuai's head. There are many things like this in the cultivation world every day. You can't save all of them. Little Shuai said. Muyu shook his head. I didn't want to save them. The life and death of the cultivators have nothing to do with me. I just couldn't help but think of them, whose whereabouts are unknown, and think of my responsibility as their senior and junior brothers. He did not know how he was going to face his 3 senior brothers in the future. He did not need to worry about his eldest senior brother, Qingyan. He was more worried about Xiangnan and Luo Shang. If in the future, the 2 of them would gradually be corrupted by the power of slaughter to the point that they forgot their original intentions and forgot about their fellow disciples because of Yaman, then when that day arrived, what would he do? Was he going to fight against Xiangnan and Luo Shang? Thank you for saving me, my lord. Wenli walked over and thanked him gratefully. He looked a little tired. Almost being killed by a senior brother had drained him mentally and physically. Muyu glanced at Zhang Gan, who was limping away in the distance. Wenli had clearly chosen to let his senior brother go instead of killing him. Muyu did not say anything, nor did he make a move to kill this person. This matter originally had nothing to do with him. It was only because he thought of his 3 senior brothers that he decided to save Wen Li. It's fine. Muyu's heart slowly calmed down. He understood that each sect had its own rules. Most sects wanted to strengthen themselves, so brothers in the sect would often scheme against each other. In order to gain the favor of their elders, they would choose to kill each other. But that wasn't the case for Dustfall Mountain. To Muyu, Dustfall Mountain was a pure land. The purpose of the Dustfall sect wasn't to compete with others. They were a poor and simple sect that practiced simple cultivation. A kind master would teach his disciples the principles of how to conduct themselves. Fellow apprentices and sisters would play around with each other. There was no need to fight and scheme against each other for cultivation resources. Everyone was treated equally. There, it was not a sect, but a family. There could be arguments, but there would never be bloodshed. How many sects in the cultivation world could achieve such a level of success? May I know my lord's name? Winley respectfully said. He could naturally see that the cultivation of this young man in front of him was far above his own. Zhang Gan's framing of him made him feel very uncomfortable in his heart, but he still wanted to express his gratitude to the person who saved him. Mu Yu said calmly, "There's no need to know my name. First, tell me what soul points are." Winley raised his head in confusion and said in surprise, "My lord, you don't know?" "Nonsense. I'm asking you because I don't know. If I knew, why would I ask you?" Little Shuai scolded from his side. Winley smiled awkwardly and quickly said, "Yes, I was rude. My lord, the soul points are a kind of formation that the extreme immortal pavilion set up to encourage us to kill the Yu Meng devils. Every time we kill a Yu Meng devil, a number will appear on our palm." Winley extended his right palm. In his palm, there was a white sphere. It was very lifelike, and the sphere was faintly flickering with a holy white light. Mu Yu could tell at a glance that this sphere was the soul bead that the people of the third palace usually used. However, it was now like a projection engraved on Wen Li's palm. There was a number in the sphere. At this moment, Wen Li's palm had 68 written on it. Wen Li continued to explain, "These are soul points. Killing Yaman can accumulate soul points. The more you kill, the more soul points you get. Killing Yaman of different strengths will give you different soul points. For example, killing a yellow stage Yaman will give you 1 soul point. Killing a profound stage Yaman will give you 5 soul points. Killing an earth stage Yaman will give you 50 soul points. Killing a heaven stage Yaman will give you 5 soul points. After accumulating a certain amount of soul points, you can go to Extreme Immortal Pavilion to exchange for the corresponding items. For example, I've always wanted to gather 100 soul points to exchange for the Soul Shock sword refined by the people of the Gate of Hell, but I didn't expect Sai." Winley thought of his senior apprentice brother and felt a sense of melancholy. A while ago, the cultivators accidentally discovered that not only can you get soul points by killing Yaman, but if you're lucky enough to kill someone with a higher cultivation, you can also get all the soul points of the other party. The 8 gates came out to clarify that this is a flaw in soul techniques. They strictly forbid us from killing each other. Those who disobey will be severely punished. I didn't expect senior apprentice brother to secretly do this to me." Winley shook his head. His cultivation had already surpassed his senior apprentice brother. That was why his senior apprentice brother wanted to make a move on him. "Understand. Then how long has it been since Yaman invaded Wuqiu City?" Mu Yu asked without batting an eyelid. Winley felt that Mu Yu's question was very strange. It could be said that there were very few people in the cultivation world who didn't know about Yaman's situation. However, he didn't voice out his doubts. He only answered honestly. "Every few days, Yaman will invade. We need to fight with the Yaman. The rewards in Extreme Immortal Pavilion are very tempting. There are many magic treasures and techniques that are worth risking our lives for. Therefore, every time we fight with the Yaman, there are countless casualties among the human race. However, the number of Yaman deaths is even higher. Then where are the people of the 8 gates now? How can we meet them?" Mu Yu asked. He came to Wuqiu City to find a person. "Sir, the people of the 8 gates are in Extreme Immortal Pavilion. Extreme Immortal Pavilion is the base of the 8 gates. It's also the place where we exchange soul points." Winley replied. Mu Yu nodded thoughtfully. Then he waved his hand. "You can go now." "Yes, thank you, sir, for saving my life." Winley bowed and left the birch forest. Xiao Shuai smacked his lips and said, "The threefold palace is really amazing. They even used formations to get soul points." Mu Yu snorted. Grandpa Village Chief is right. The world is bustling with activity. Everyone comes and goes for benefits. The threefold palace took advantage of the fact that the human race is willing to risk their lives for benefits. That's why they created this thing. I have to say that their method is very successful. As long as there are benefits, there's no need to worry about the cultivators retreating. Actually, this method of exchanging soul points for magic treasures wasn't thought of by Jie. According to what Muyu knew, Helion Kong's era had already existed. However, the soul points back then weren't this white soul technique. Instead, it was a statistical formation set up by the Formation Glyph sect. It was similar, and there were records of this in the Formation Glyph sect. The threefold palace that Bai Jie controlled now was just a method that the threefold palace used to motivate people to fight. What was different from the threefold palace was that the threefold palace of Helion Kong's era used formations to do statistics. After killing a cultivator, one wouldn't get the accumulated points of the cultivator. However, Bai Jie changed this rule. Killing your own people can get all the points of the other party. This way, killing a cultivator is more practical than killing a Yumon. Not only does Bai Jie want the cultivators to kill Yumon, but he also wants the cultivators to kill each other. This plan is really vicious, said Little Commander. The threefold palace's goal of controlling the war is to create more deaths. There's no difference between killing each other and killing Yumon, said Muyu. This was no longer the era where the human race and Yumon were fighting to the death. Instead, it was the dark era controlled by Bai Jie. Bai Jie made full use of the cultivators' self-interest. He wanted the cultivators to kill Yumon in the open and kill their own people in the dark to achieve his goal. He was vicious. But if he does this, won't everyone think of killing their own people instead of killing Yumon? Asked Little Commander. Did you forget? Didn't he say that those with lower cultivation can only get points if they kill those with higher cultivation? In other words, it's useless for those with higher cultivation to kill those with lower cultivation. Think about it. How likely is it that those with lower cultivation can kill those with higher cultivation? Said Muyu. The threefold palace would have thought of this. They just purposely left a loophole to increase the chances of death. After all, it was possible for those with lower cultivation to kill those with higher cultivation as long as they used some underhanded methods. That's true. That's why they probably need someone like Zhang Gan. Killing those you trust is undoubtedly the most effective method. It's really scary, said Little Commander. The threefold palace did this to drive a wedge between the cultivators. They want the cultivators to be unable to trust each other. Otherwise, if they're not careful, they'll be killed by others. As long as the cultivators are suspicious of each other, they'll be restricted from spreading bad news about the threefold palace. This is because the threefold palace controls all those with higher cultivation. For the sake of their own interests and safety, people with high cultivations wouldn't believe the words of people with low cultivations. As for people with low cultivations, they didn't dare to trust people with lower cultivations than them. They could only try their best to curry favor with people with higher cultivations. Regardless of whether they had malicious intentions or not, they wouldn't be wrong to listen to people with higher cultivations. Chapter 978. The city of Wuqiu City was quite big, and there were countless of self-cultivator buildings. However, the extreme Immortal Pavilion had become the most important place in many cities. Therefore, if one wanted to find the extreme Immortal Pavilion, one only needed to look at it from a distance above the city to see the tallest and most luxurious building. Muyu walked into the extreme Immortal Pavilion. There was a sea of people here, and countless people were exchanging soul points. Many people were surrounding the counters and pointing at them. The big sects all took out tempting magic treasures and techniques, as well as some precious materials. Different sects' items were divided into several exhibition areas. The entire Extreme Immortal Pavilion had 5 floors, and each floor was very big, enough to accommodate at least 1,000 people at the same time. I've never liked the Extreme Immortal Pavilion, but I have to admit that their free pastries are quite delicious. Little Shuai had already temporarily stored the candied haws and mutton skewers into Muyu's universe sleeve. Once he entered, he went to find a large pile of pastries to eat. Muyu looked around and saw the Stargate's Soul Point exchange area at a glance. Stargate was worthy of being one of the 8 gates. They were rich and imposing, and the items they exchanged were dazzling, making people drool. 500 soul points can be exchanged for a Stargate Outer Disciple token. That's great. I must exchange for such a precious opportunity for my son to enter the sect. 1,500 soul points can be exchanged for the Stargate Outer Disciple Elder status. When will I be able to gather so many? This star guiding spear is 2,000 soul points. Oh my god. It said that this is a magic treasure personally refined by Stargate's Tian Hoyong when he was in the body fusion stage. It's extremely precious. 1,300 soul points can enter the Stargate's Tianji Peak to cultivate for a month. It's really something to look forward to. Many people were pointing and gossiping in front of the Stargate's Soul Points exhibition area. Most of them were just talking and joining in on the fun. Those with low cultivation simply flinched at the sight of it. However, they could exchange for items that were worth 20 to 30 soul points, such as the inner core of a Class 3 demonic beast. We even saw some pills that could be exchanged for. Alchemists weren't just limited to the Danding School. In a cultivation world, many sects would also cultivate their own alchemists. It was just that the Danding School's pills were more comprehensive. Moreover, most of the high-level pills were concentrated in the Danding School. He roughly glanced at them and discovered that many of these medicinal pills were 3rd or 4th rank. The highest-ranked medicinal pills were only a few 5th-rank medicinal pills. Furthermore, the soul points they could be exchanged for were ridiculously high. For example, a 5th-rank spirit-restoring pill was worth 900 soul points. Now that the Danding School is closed, the supply of medicinal pills can't meet the demand. I'm afraid that many people can't even buy a spirit-restoring pill with 100,000 soul points. Xiao Shuai's mouth was stuffed with pastries, and he spoke with a lisp. However, Mui was pondering about another matter in his heart. Because the Danding School and the Array faction were the most important to cultivators, he had a close relationship with them. In that case, he could completely rely on Array techniques and medicinal pills to firmly grasp the mentality of cultivators. Compared to the techniques exchanged for by the 8 gates, medicinal pills and Array techniques were much more attractive to cultivators. He already had a rough plan in his mind, and he knew how to use cultivators to deal with the threefold palace. However, the plan now had to be carried out step by step. Muyu came here because Master Lu told him that Stargate's Tian Jiansheng was in Wuqiu City. Tian Jiansheng was an elder of the Stargate's body integration stage. His status and position were quite high, and he knew many secrets of the Stargate. If Muyu wanted to destroy the Stargate, he first needed an elder who could enter the various secret forbidden areas of the Stargate as a guide. When Tian Jiansheng was in the desert of Qingshui City, he was already under Xiang Nan's control. Muyu naturally came to find Tian Jiansheng, which was the most sensible thing to do. Look, there's even a chance to exchange soul points for guidance from an expert. 10,000 soul points can only be exchanged for 2 days of guidance from a tribulation passing Heavenly Hoyong. Little Shuai took out a list from somewhere and pointed at it. Muyu took the list and looked at it carefully. He found that there were more than 500 kinds of things that could be exchanged with soul points, and there were all kinds of benefits. Not only was there guidance from Tian Hoyong, but there was also guidance from a body integration stage elder and guidance from a severed soul stage expert. In the cultivation world, from the severed soul stage onwards, one was considered a true expert. Therefore, guidance from a severed soul stage expert was a very precious opportunity for low-level cultivators. To become the disciple of Elder Tian Jiansheng, who is at the body integration stage, requires 6,000 soul points. Muyu looked at the Stargate's soul points exchange list. All kinds of prices were clearly marked. Even becoming the disciple of a master was a transaction. It was really a good method. However, how could an ordinary person collect so many soul points? Killing a Heaven Stage Yumeng would cost 500 soul points. Killing an Earth Stage Yumeng would cost 50 soul points. A Profound Stage Yumeng would cost 5 soul points, and a Yellow Stage Yumeng would cost 1 soul point. Yuman wouldn't just stand there and let others kill him. If they wanted to kill him, they would have to pay a price. Sometimes, they would even lose their own lives. Obviously, it was enough to quickly collect enough soul points to kill 12 Heaven Stage Yuman. However, if one had the ability to kill a heaven stage Yumon, his cultivation level would be at least at the body integration stage. Would he still need to become the disciple of a master? However, because the price of this transaction was clearly stated, Muyu had a rough idea of the Heavenly Star sect's true strength. For example, there were now 80 cultivators at the form synthesis stage in the Heavenly Star sect. This could be said to be a terrifying number. 80 body integration stage cultivators. It could be seen how powerful they were. It seems that Stargate should have recruited a lot of other rogue cultivators as guest elders. Muyu remembered that Danding School didn't have so many body integration stage guest elders, but Stargate obviously recruited a lot of body integration stage outsiders for this war. However, a new problem arose. How was he going to find Tian Jianxing? Now, Muyu naturally couldn't brazenly go and find Tian Jianxing. There were 6 tribulation passing stage experts in the extreme immortal pavilion. When Muyu entered the pavilion, he sensed it. These tribulation passing stage elders were on the top floor of the pavilion. If anything happened downstairs, they would definitely show up in time. Muyu would have a hard time dealing with 6 tribulation passing stage elders alone. Moreover, once his identity was exposed, his plan to destroy Stargate would probably go wrong. Do we also have to kill Yaman to exchange for soul points and then become the disciple of Tian Jiansheng? Xiao Shuai asked in disdain. Become his disciple? Where does he get his confidence from? Muyu snorted. Naturally, he wouldn't kill Yaman. It wasn't his style to kill a few people when he met them. Muyu looked at the workers in the corner who were in charge of recording and exchanging soul points. He squeezed to the side and wanted to ask about Elder Tian Jinxing's situation. However, it seemed like he was in luck because there were people discussing something beside him. Have you heard? It's said that the new Valley Master of Golden Wolf Valley, Chou Jinghuan, collected 6,000 soul points yesterday. Today, he's preparing to become the disciple of Stargate's Elder Tian Jianxing. A young man with a scar on his nose said, I've also heard about this. I didn't expect the new Valley Master of Golden Wolf Valley to be able to collect 6,000 soul points. It's really inconceivable. A woman with a seductive face said as she twisted her waist. Don't be ridiculous. Golden Wolf Valley is a second-rate sect. That Chou Jinghuan's cultivation is only at the first layer of the spirit severing stage. How could he collect 6,000 soul points? A red-bearded man said in a gruff voice. The scarred young man said mysteriously, You're ignorant and inexperienced. It said that. This Chou Jinghuan was originally the youngest disciple of the previous Valley Master of Golden Wolf Valley. The previous Valley Master of Golden Wolf Valley was originally at the first layer of the body fusion stage. He took in 10 disciples, and they were all at the spirit severing stage. However, Chou Jinghuan, who has the lowest cultivation, became the Valley Master. What do you think the reason is? If you have something to say, say it. If you have farts, say it. Don't beat around the bush. The red-bearded man snorted. The scarred young man didn't get angry. Instead, he lowered his voice and said, You don't know. This Chou Jinghuan used shameful methods to kill his master and 9 senior brothers. What? The red-bearded man and the enchanting woman were both shocked. Is that true? Think about whether or not there's something fishy about this matter. If someone with a lower cultivation base kills someone with a higher cultivation base, they can obtain all the soul points on the other party's body. With Chou Jinghuan's cultivation base at the first celestial layer of spirit severing stage, how could he gather 6,000 soul points? Golden Wolf Valley's Chou Jinghuan announced to the public that the previous Valley Master and 9 senior brothers were killed by Yuman on the battlefield. Who would believe this kind of news? Everyone didn't say it out loud, but they all knew it in their hearts. Chou Jinghuan used some methods to kill his senior brothers and master when they weren't paying attention. Then, he stole all the soul points that his master and senior brothers obtained. The scarred young man said with contempt, This Chou Jinghuan is truly vicious and merciless. The red-bearded man couldn't help but say. The enchanting woman smiled charmingly. Actually, I don't think this is much. This is a very normal thing. People walk to higher places while water flows to lower places. Huan killed his master and 9 senior brothers, then went to take Tian Jiansheng as his master. This is hugging a thigh. It is said that after Tian Jiansheng returned from Clearwater City, his cultivation reached the 9th layer of the body integration stage. Taking a 9th layer of the body integration stage as a master is much better than following his spirit-severing stage senior brothers. You are right. However, little sister Yao, can you tell me how many soul points you have collected now? The scarred young man laughed mischievously. The enchanting woman grabbed the scarred young man's collar. If you dare to have any ideas about me, I will kill you right now. The scarred young man smiled disdainfully. My cultivation is higher than yours. If I have any ideas about you, it would be you who wants to have ideas about me, right? A person with a lower cultivation would have to kill a person with a higher cultivation to get all the soul points of the other party. The scarred young man's cultivation was clearly higher than the enchanting woman's. When the enchanting woman heard this, she immediately put on a smiling face. She gently smoothed the scarred young man's clothes and then gently stroked the scarred young man's face with her fingertips. Big brother, you must be joking. I am not willing to lay my hands on you. Hee hee. Are you unwilling or don't dare? Why don't you come to my room tonight and let me dote on you? Everyone says that if you die under a peony, you will still be a romantic ghost. The scarred young man wasn't worried at all, but he still cursed in his heart. Clearly, he couldn't believe this enchanting woman. Okay, the enchanting woman twisted her slender waist and kept rubbing against the scarred young man's body. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.